of them as well. What a move from the 48. Oh, look at this, and onto the straight they come.
Brilliant move there from the number 40 to make it through. That left-hander sliding up the inside, going up now over Hawthorne Hill, down Pilgrim's Drop, and it's brilliant stuff here at Brands Hatch.
Hello everybody and welcome to Silverstone for the penultimate round of the Motorsport UK Esports GT Challenge, here live on RaceSpotTV as always. It is the penultimate round and that means championships are very much on the line. Because it's the penultimate round, of course, it means all can be won tonight. Whether they all are going to be is a very different question indeed, as all four are still very much open and up for grabs here in tonight's race. It is the world famous Silverstone circuit, the home of British Motorsport, for the penultimate round of our championship. Myself, Ian Lilly and Darren Facker will take you through the action with Hugo Louise behind the cameras. It's the business end of the season, Darren, and the Grand Prix double header is ending here tonight.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing how the drivers can almost carry through some momentum if they were able to build it up last week at Spa into tonight's race at Silverstone. I think it's going to be, a very different race next week when we get to the finale at Brands Hatch. And so, if you're more of a Grand Prix layout-based driver, this could be a really important place to pick up some big points before next week's tight and difficult Brands.
Or indeed, if your manufacturer doesn't like it, then it could be a bit of a tricky one. We will see, of course. A reminder there at the bottom of your screen of all of the prizes available to these drivers. The top three in all classes getting 2 general admission tickets to a 2025 British GT round of their choice. The winning driver getting a SimMagic GT Neo wheel rim and Base Performance Simulator GT Sim Simulator session, as well as a random driver who's competed in all the rounds, a random draw of those who have done so. A SimMagic Alpha Mini wheelbase. So plenty up for grabs in the next 2 weeks. And Adam Watson has very much taken charge in GT3 Pro. He is 32 points ahead of Ben Cooper, with Aidan Carter, Rachel Conkley and Andrew Pike all not that very far behind, and indeed the battle for second in the championship could be quite an interesting one. Mike Barber and Matt Cheverton are tied for 6th ahead of Pedro Silva, James King. Gareth Higgins doesn't have any points, down at the bottom end of the top 10. In GT3 AM, it's Franek Sikorsky who's leading the way. This is actually the second closest of our championships. Ricky Pittman is in second place, 20 points behind, with Oliver Ettridge and Nathan Anstis not too far away. Only 1 point separates them as they fight for a top 3. Ben Pennyworth rounds out the top 5 with a bit of a jump then back to Jake Pitt. Jean-Luc Elliott and Nick Estes is next up ahead of Andy Schell and Zed Murray, rounding out the top 10 of GT3 AM. In GT4 Pro, there aren't many contenders or indeed drivers in this series, but it is the closest. Kieran Sharp and Daniel Thomas only 6 points apart from Christian Menzies, Brandon Loudon, Ryan Moles and Neb Wharton rounding out the field. It was Neb Wharton's opening round actually in the previous round of our championship. His debut round. And in GT4 AM, Joe Coffin leads the way ahead of Joshua Bagembe. That is also 32 points. First and second are on the same amount of points as what GT3 Pro drivers are. Luca Monroe is next ahead of Ethan Marone and David Brown. They'll be fighting for that top 3 place, or the last spots inside the top 3. Emmy Graham is next ahead of Matty Wild, Carl Chase, Georgie Mackay and Craig Hewlett rounding out the top 10 of GT4 AM. So still plenty up for grabs here, but there are definitely some contenders who can take the title here tonight. It's worth noting that if you have a more than 45 point lead, then they won't even have to turn up next round, but we're hoping that all the championships will stay below that so we can get a good finale next week. As we follow Adam Watson, what a great season it's been from him so far. 32 points ahead of the rest. He is very much in control of our GT3 Pro Championship.
Yeah, it's been such an impressive season up to this point, just being able to get the points on the board early on, and where some others have fallen by the wayside in a couple of the races early on this season, he's just been able to keep that consistency high and put himself into a position where, I think he'd back himself to be able to win the championship tonight. It's not going to be necessarily easy. He is going to have to depend on a couple of others having difficult races, but he's put himself in this position where he may not have to be, like you say, at Brands next week with the ability that he has been able to show. So a lot of hope for him as we go into this qualifying session, but that means that the pressure is slightly on because the target is more than ever on his back.
There he comes out of turn number 4. And now through entry onto the Wellington Straight. Not a circuit I traditionally associate with the Porsche going particularly well at, if I'm honest with you, but we'll see if he can get this car hooked up this afternoon as he now enters Brooklands. Can be difficult on the rear end through here. The rear left just lifting off the ground almost through there in some cars, but not these. Out of Luffield, double apex, out onto the next straight, which is not quite straight, of course. This is where the stop finish line used to be, and where the old pit lane still is now, and still used in some events. Now through the very fast Cobbs Corner, which therefore used to be turn 1, and now in towards Brooklyn, Manx and Beckett's as well. Some of the fastest corners in the United Kingdom through here. Eventually, though, just as you go through the corners, just getting slower as you go along, though. And then out of the final turn and onto the Hangar Straight. He's already got something to aim at. Ben Cooper has gone fastest so far. Frank Sikorsky again showing that he is a quick driver and can mix it amongst the pros early on, especially in these races, by going into second. But you'd imagine Adam Watson's going to have a good chance at jumping over all of them here, as long as he's stayed on the circuit and he's getting a lap in here. Seems to be going at a speed that suggests this lap time is going to count. So he now works his way past these final couple of corners and onto the front straight. First lap time for Adam Watson. Just over 5 minutes to go. What is it going to be? Some of the sector times. What's the overall lap time going to be? It is going to be best, and it's by some distance as well.
Absolutely huge advantage over Ben Cooper right now, nearly 4/5 of a second. Incredible to see him that far in front of the rest of the pack. The gap that he's got to second is pretty much the same as the gap between second and 7th, all in that GT3 class, with still a few more yet to set some lap times. Interesting to see what Daniel Thomas can do, if he can improve on the lap time that he's currently set, as he leads the way in the GT4s for the time being. Joshua Bigembe puts himself to the top of that AM class as well. Really interested to see if Bigembe can bounce back after a difficult week last time out at Spa. He's lost a lot of ground to the championship leader in that slowest of the classes, of course, who is Joe Coffin. And Joe Coffin now with a 32-point gap, similar to Adam Watson's in the GT3 Pro. So I think both of those drivers are going to be very keen to wrap things up this evening. But Bigembe clearly with a little bit of grief hanging over from last week that he didn't pick up the points that he probably could have done.
Yeah, I think he was really frustrated actually after that race last week. He's now 32 points behind Joe Coffin with some real work to do. If Joe Coffin finishes, for example, in the top 4 in both rounds, there's nothing he can do, Joshua Bigembe. So that is pretty difficult to overcome for Joe Coffin, as Daniel Thomas now works his way into the final few corners. We've been following him on his lap and following a GT4, I guess, more importantly, to see the difference between these cars. Because it is such a long circuit, we're not like to see very many lapping interactions again, much like we did at Spa actually. I think only some of the drivers only went 1 or 2 laps down in GT4 last week, such as the length of the Spa circuit. Is Thomas going to go any quicker? Looks like it actually. Yep, another few tenths for Thomas, and he trails, by the way, by 6 points. We'll really be focusing on him and Kieran Sharp today. At the moment they are separated by just 2/10 of a second early on in this session, but what a fight they're having in this championship season.
Yeah, and in a class where only 4 drivers can now win the title, because even we've had 6 racing the class so far this season, Ned Wharton and Ryan Moles haven't picked up enough points to keep themselves in contention with 2 rounds to go. So really interested to see how that dynamic works, because it really will be a head-to-head fight between Kieran Sharp and Daniel Thomas. Maybe we could see an extra driver or 2 start to mix it in, but realistically, we know it's between the 2 of them. They know it's between the 2 of them, and we'll be looking at each other trying to double guess what they're doing. Daniel Thomas, of course, getting the win at Spa last week, giving him a big boost after the double win for Kieran Sharp to kick off the season. So if he can carry on that form, then we could find ourselves in a tied championship situation going into next week, which would, I think, be the only championship that could even be that close, quite frankly.
I've heard of a second guess. What's a double guess?
Did I say double guess? Oh, I don't know then. Not a clue.
Thought you meant to. Okay. Right. Second guess then. Well, I got there in the end anyway. Ben Cooper through the final corners right now in the gold and black. He's fifth in this session. 3/4 of a second off of Adam Watson, who's still comfortably ahead of the rest. He has actually just noted himself ahead again, a little bit further ahead as Mike Barber and Alfie Nichols just come in to challenge him through the final corner now for Ben Cooper. And that is a decent time. That's an improvement. That should have him up to at least fourth, maybe third. It is just fourth, only 5 thousandths behind Alfie Nichols, who will be going over the line again shortly. Mike Barber is done for the day. That's the end of his session. Adam Watson is still, I think, out there on the circuit as far as I'm aware. Alfie Nichols is not yet complete yet either, but it'd be a huge job for the youngster to get ahead of Adam Watson here in this session from 6.5 tenths back.
Yeah, it would be a bit of a monumental effort at this stage of right at the end of the qualifying session, quite frankly. Let's see what Alfie Nichols can do in the Ferrari as he comes in towards Maggots and Beck. It's just going to keep the car underneath you is such a difficult task to this part of the racetrack, particularly when you're pushing for the extra 100, extra thousand. And being brave on that throttle as you now come out of trap, you can really focus on the final couple of corners. Difficulty is for Alfie Nichols is big gap up to Adam Watson. Maybe there's a chance of getting after Mike Barber in terms of the time, but I think he'd be needing to pull out a wonder lap to beat that 159.1.
He would probably have to be a 58 realistically. You're not going to sneak him in between that gap there, but maybe. Let's see what Nichols can do. The first sector was a little bit slower than what it needs to be, and so was the second, I think. So it may not be all too conclusive for him, for Alfie Nichols. Nobody around him, even still out on the circuit. He is the last one to give it a go, and he can't even go quicker than his own lap time there, unfortunately, for Alfie Nichols. So it is a third place in his first qualifying session of the season. He hasn't been here yet this season, by the way, in case you've not been watching so far this season. Alfie Nichols is a new driver into the field. I think he only joined in time for this race at Silverstone. So the time now does elapse. It does look like it's going to be Adam Watson to take the pole position. We've got 36 in the session, by the way, but 5 of them didn't qualify there. Well, let's see where they all are in the starting grid for this race at Silverstone tonight. Adam Watson on the front row, and an all Porsche front row, in fact, with Mike Barber alongside. It's Alfie Nichols and Ben Cooper next up. Nichols the only non-Porsche inside the top 4. Andrew Pike is the first of the Corvettes and the first of the Audis, driven by Rachel Conkley on row 3. 7th place has gone to Franich Sikorsky in the first of the GT3 AMs, and the first of those over a second off of pole. That's Aidan Carter, just 3 thousandths ahead of Pedro Silva, with Matt Cheverton rounding out the top 10 in the first of the Mustangs. Then it's James King in the first of the BMWs, ahead of the first of the McLarens. In that 12th place, Ben Bennyworth is next alongside Ricky Pittman in 7th. On row 7 rather. John Earl and Jake Pitt are next, ahead of Jandy Chell and Zed Murray, 17th and 18th. And then come the GT4s. Kieran Sharp on the pole by just 29 thousandths ahead of Daniel Thomas. What a battle they're continuing to have with Christian Menzies involved. And Ned Wharton as well, who very much impressed on debut last week. Ethan Marone is not that far away, even though he's an AM driver in the pole position there, alongside David Brown. Neither of the 2 championship contenders on the front row this time round. They're on row 2 instead. Joe Coffin ahead of Joshua Bigembe. Cole Chase and Luca Monroe are next, ahead of Ashley Topp and Amy Grimm, rounding out the top 30 overall. Ash Hill was the final driver to set a time, with Brandon Loden, Matty Wild, Dave Young, Dylan Mystery and Jim Fox not setting times. Hopefully they'll get to the start. At least Matty Wild, Dylan Mystery and Jim Fox so far have gridded up, so that is good news on this very short run towards the final few corners. No huge shocks, I don't think, in that qualifying session we can point to there, but there's a long, long race ahead of them as well. An hour and a half for them to gain and lose places in one of the most important races this season, setting themselves up for our finale in 7 days' time.
Yeah, and I think drivers are going to have that in the back of their minds, that we are finishing the season so quickly. I mean, it's been, a month since we started the championship, only a few weeks ago, but already drivers have to think about who they're racing to the end of the championship. That's going to be a really big piece in that puzzle. Who's able to get themselves close to the title. We may even see titles be won tonight, with some big gaps forming already. But I think for the drivers doing the championship, they just want the points on the board. They don't really need to worry about what others are doing. But to put themselves in the best place possible is what they need to do going into Brands Hatch, which is a tricky circuit to nail.
All 36 have indeed gotten onto the grid, and we are ready to go here at Silverstone. The penultimate round of the Motorsport UK Esports GT Challenge here on iRacing is set to take off here at Silverstone. The home of British Motorsport playing host to one of the most important rounds of this GT Challenge, with Championship leader Adam Watson in control of the field, and he's going to hold them on the front straight as well. And then the green flag waves, and they all fan out immediately. 3 and 4 wide on the way down in towards turn 1. Watson will slightly pull to the racing line before turn 1 as Alfie Nichols looks at the inside of Mike Barber into the first turn. He can't get past, and the top 3 stay in the positions they qualified in. Here meanwhile comes Ben Cooper down the inside as well. He can't do anything either. The top 4 remain single file. Same goes in GT4 actually, where Kieran Sharp has taken the lead and held the lead. Ethan Marone still in the lead in the AM class, with Joshua Pagembe up to second place. It's a clean start all in all. Glad to report, especially for the GT3s. Looks like it is for the GT4s as well.
Yeah, really important, I think, for all of the drivers to make sure that they don't make big mistakes off the line, and that's what we've seen so far. Aidan Carter, race winner at Spa last time out, going for a move down in towards Brooklands and Luffield, getting it done for P5. Flashing of the lights, though, clearly a little bit of unhappiness for the drivers just in behind, but Andrew Pike's going to have to live with staying in P6 because Aidan Carter's not going to give him the position back anytime soon. Really great to see everybody get their way through on the opening lap, and championship battles really are taking a bit of a turn with Sharp ahead of Thomas now, particularly in that GT4 Pro class. That's going to be a big swing either way, whoever wins this race.
That was side by side into Cop's corner there, a bit further back in the pack. This is Matt Cheverton, side by side. I think of Pedro Silva on the outside, and it is. He's been crowded out rather. Here comes the BMW as well of John Earl. He's in the AM class. They're not even in the same class, but they're battling away. And Silva's going backwards. That was very close. Earl did a good job, though, just to sneak through on Pedro Silva. Now he'll be looking over his shoulder at James King, who is in his class, in the next of the BMWs, and might be looking for a move on the way towards Stoke Corner, and it won't happen. Instead, King will be looking over his shoulder. Ricky Pittman down the inside. Oh, and up over the curb and a bit loose there in the McLaren. Goes wide. Through again goes King, and Nathan Anstis is going to try and take that third place away from Pittman into the final chicane. As again, Silva goes side by side up ahead. Pittman at least hangs on to a podium place for now.
Yeah, really good work as they run their way in towards the final corner. Big contact though, massive contact into the wall, and that's Nathan Anstis with a lot of front-end damage. I think you'd imagine that that car's not going to be looking too well now, and you can see the bonnet already gone visually. You can't imagine it's going to drive into turn 1 particularly well either, so massively damaging for his championship aspirations already on the opening lap, albeit at the final corner.
That is a disaster for Nathan Anstis, really. He is going to have a very, very long hour and a half up ahead of him. He's currently 4th place in the championship. Actually won the opening round of the season at Donington Park, but he's not going to be winning here today. Oh, it just looked like he got a little bit loose initially on the curb, and then it was side-to-side contact with a Porsche, who I wouldn't say was at fault there, but did certainly contribute to the final blow.
Yeah, really difficult on the opening lap to have that kind of contact and to receive that kind of damage, particularly if you are Anstis, as we do see one of the quartermaster cars going right side by side, and a little bit of a touch into the gravel as we run our way through Luffield. That's the number 5 of Andy Chell, just ahead of Jake Pitt as they fight their way in towards Woodcote and now in towards Copse Corner, one of the most scary corners, quite frankly, on the racetrack. Don't want to be going side by side, particularly in these GT machines, but Andy Chell just going to hang on for a top 5 position in this race, and I think he'd be pretty pleased to be there right now.
Well, lap 2 drawing to almost a close here in GT3, where we've seen some fantastic racing so far. Sometimes you can get pretty single-filed out and ordinary so early on, but we certainly did at Spa, but not here just yet. Good battles going on right down the field as Jake Pitt has a look at Andy Chell now, down the inside, and Pitt should have that overtake done in towards Stoke Corner. Currently 6th place in the championship, Pitt, but was runner-up last week at Spa. It's about to get worse for Chell. He's now looking over his shoulder at Jim Fox in the McLaren, who can't make his way down the inside that time round into the final chicane. So end of lap 2, Adam Watson leads overall. And in fact, the top 4 places, at least, maybe more, have stayed the same in Pro. Frank Sikorsky's still leading in AM, and it's an even bigger lead now because of that going on up ahead here. It was John Earl running second. He's not anymore. He's spun to the inside after turn 1.
Yeah, I think Jake Pitt involved in there as well, as he's dropped down the timing page too. Zed Murray maybe involved. Ben Bennyworth actually could be one of those. Not really what they needed towards the back end of that GT3 AM class. And now it's given a great chance for Andy Chell to be in the podium positions for a driver who's only scored 49 points in the opening 3 rounds. This is a fantastic place for the quartermaster driver to be in as his teammate Ben Bennyworth. That is not looking like it's going very far.
He's 5th place in the championship coming in here today. Bennyworth would have been fighting for that top 3. It does come with prizes, as we said at the top of the show here in the GT Challenge. This is what happened to Earl. That's completely on his own. And a very un-BMW thing to happen, actually. Lots of drivers scattering to avoid. Jake Pitt here. Oh, so Bennyworth maybe hits Earl. I'm not sure, but Ben Pitt hit Bennyworth afterwards, and Ben Bennyworth had to pull off at turn 3 because there was nowhere else he could go. And now, oh, he does hit Earl. So John Earl was sat just off the racing line there, but I'm not sure Bennyworth was quite clear on where he was going to go, and he went and smacked into the BMW.
Yeah, it's not the easiest moment for either one of them. The 71 going off the road ever so slightly. That's not what you need for Carl Chase as he goes off the road in towards the Vale chicane either. A couple of misdemeanors in the opening stages, but it's nice to see that generally on the whole we've seen quite a few of the drivers, particularly the contenders in the title, get away cleanly and be able to get their race and get themselves into a rhythm at the start of this race. Not least Franek Sikorsky, who leads that GT3 AM class by nearly 6 seconds, and when you consider that the other 3 gaps for the lead are less than a second, it's a huge margin for the 46.
It is. Partly down to his qualifying performance and putting drivers between himself and second place, but also partly because of that spin from the second place as well, as Kieran Sharp still leads in GT4 Pro. He took the pole position in the qualifying session. Daniel Thomas took second, and that's how they're running here early on. And based on what we saw at Spa, these two might run like this for quite a long time.
Yes, I wouldn't imagine that it's going to be much different for the next hour or so at least, and they're just going to be tracking each other. Tom's obviously won that battle psychologically and physically on the circuit last week. He's going to really want to do it again to put the championship in what would be a dead heat going into the final round. 2 wins apiece, 2 second places apiece would be how it sits going into Brands Hatch, but I think Kieran Sharp would then fancy himself in the final round. Again, the opening 2 rounds of the season on tighter, more difficult circuits to navigate, particularly with the traffic. Last round at Spa, this round here at Silverstone, a little bit wider. Grand Prix layouts mean that it is maybe a little bit easier. Some drivers are more suited to these tracks than others, so I think the messier swing back, but you never really do know, and you've got to put yourself in a good position to win a championship, and that is exactly what Daniel Thomas is going to be thinking about in the early stages of this race.
Interestingly, he won that race last week from leading the field through the entirety of the first part of the race, and then coming out ahead of them. This time round, he's in second place, so it'll be interesting to see if there is a difference there, as last week's winner in the GT3 Pro class, Aidan Carter, looked for a move on Ben Cooper there. Wasn't anything doing. Now maybe into the final chicane there will be. But it would have to be a lunge from the driver of the Corvette, and Carter not quite willing to do that for the moment, considering only 8 minutes are gone. Considering the advantage in qualifying, Adam Watson is only leading by 7 tenths right now, and there's still very much, well, have a look at this camera shot here. 7, 8, yeah, 9 drivers in the same camera shot there, which I wasn't really expecting, even though there are only 4 laps gone. It's closer than I was imagining.
It is, but I mean, the good thing for him right now is that if things were to stay as they are, with Ben Cooper down in 4th and with Aidan Carter down in P5, if things were to stay as they are, which, you know, albeit it would be difficult, he'd be in a position to win the championship. 47 points he is ahead, as it would stand ahead of Ben Cooper, with Cooper, you know, dropping a load of points. So if Mike Barber's near him, I don't think he's going to be terribly concerned. Barber down in 6th in the championship coming into this one isn't necessarily on his radar for the title. So if Barber can be a bit of a buffer between Watson and the rest of his championship rivals, then I see no other reason why that he shouldn't stick him there. The issue that will therefore come is that if he stays pretty close to Mike Barber and allows him to sit on the rear wing, it invites the rest to almost have a go and stay relatively close and keep this front train more compact than it otherwise could be.
Just to explain that championship situation, Cooper needs to be at the very least on the podium here today to ensure that Adam Watson doesn't win the title, and Aidan Carter realistically needs to finish ahead of Watson, especially if he's in the top, if he's in the podium himself. Carter needs to finish ahead of Adam Watson, otherwise it's going to be sewn up around early, which is what Adam Watson will certainly be looking at doing. And Aiden Carter right now is looking very strong. Surely the Corvette's going to have the grunt now on the hanger straight. You could see Carter having a bit of a peak last time round, wasn't quite close enough. This time round, that Corvette is crawling over the back of the Porsche. Now chooses the outside line. Wasn't given a load of choice, but it's going to be round the outside at Stowe. Spectacular if it works. Pretty unlikely though. And immediately the door is shut by Ben Cooper. This needs to be sorted out between the two of them quickly. If they let themselves get dragged into a big battle for fourth place, they could see those podium places go up the road very quickly.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the concern for them in the early stages of this race. Carter, I think off the back of last week, with the confidence flowing, would want to get inside the top four and then push on. So I think that's what Aiden's thinking of right now. But the risk is getting it wrong in the move. We've seen a couple of moves go awry so far in the opening 10 minutes of this race. But Village, a place where we see a lot of sends. Not this time, though. But maybe to the inside of Village and the loop. Oh, sorry, into Village. We're into the loop and Aintree. A little bit of contact maybe on the exit. But it seems that they're all nice and fair as they emerge onto that Wellington straight, but they are just losing a little bit of time to those three in front, and if they start losing more and more and more, then it's going to be even more difficult to get back inside that slipstream.
Well, this is proving a tricky point in the race for these two now. Deciding what to do and how to best go about this is proving pretty difficult. I think that was the Corvette just flashing its lights as well, actually, there. Aiden Carter applying the pressure in psychological ways as well as real ones. I'm not sure whether I was just misseeing that or not, to be fair. Not clear, but over the old start-finish line they go. And into the very fast right-hander at Copse Corner. We'll now head towards Maggots and Beckett's with Cooper putting similar amounts of pressure on again here. Carter, excuse me, onto Cooper, of course, through the fast sweepers at the end of the lap. Not traditionally where you'd see the Porsche going so well, but clearly Adam Watson's making it work, and so is Mike Barber right now as well. On board with the Corvette now as it tries to drag past the Porsche, and Carter is finding this a bit of a struggle. Cooper not even feeling that a defence is necessary into Stowe that time. That's how comfortable Ben Cooper is this time round.
Yeah, really impressive to see him be able to just control this little battle. It doesn't really seem like he is in control as Carter maybe looks for an inside line in towards the Bell chicane. Thinks better of it, will stay in behind and will continue in P5. But I think both of these drivers will be aware that they have to get closer to Adam Watson, otherwise the championship will ebb away from them. Aiden Carter again picking up more points in the last round than Ben Cooper would feel like the momentum can be there to keep themselves inside that 45-point margin. But as it stands, they're both outside, and Aiden Carter by 58 points at the moment away from Adam Watson, so we'd need to do a lot of progress to keep them involved. I think Ben Cooper, I'm not sure whether he wants to defend too much here, because he knows that he can't really afford to make a big mistake. Otherwise, really, championship completely gone. The problem is, he just doesn't seem like he's got the pace right now, and maybe he'll be thinking to himself whether letting through Aiden Carter and maybe using the slipstream to help him out could catch him up to the top three.
Yeah, exactly. In the background, Sikorsky defends from Rachel Conkley in towards the Brooklands, and was that a giving over of the place? Yes, it was. So initially it looked like Franek Sikorsky wanted to keep Conkley behind just so that there would be that extra bit of buffer back to the GT3 AM rivals, but Sikorsky probably recognises that getting dragged into a big fight here is likely to cost both of them more time than it's going to gain him in keeping another driver between himself and his nearest rivals. That's still Ricky Pittman in the GT3 AM class. If it stays as it is, by the way, then Sikorsky needs, well, in any case, however it is, Sikorsky needs Pittman to be outside of the top 7 today to clinch the title. That does seem unlikely, especially right now, considering Pittman is in second place. But yeah, I feel I probably agree on Cooper at the moment. I do feel that he'll be thinking, if only Carter wasn't there, I might be able to go a bit quicker myself right now, because all that pressure is making me mirror drive a little bit and slowing me down. Certainly not slowing these guys down, but Kieran Sharp, I think, is safe in the knowledge that Daniel Thomas isn't going to be trying to make an overtake in the not too distant future.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the concern, really, and the wariness that they will find going through this race. But again, still in the early stages, it's a really funny almost window in time, isn't it, a 90-minute race? Because a 60-minute race, you think of that almost extended sprint. 90-minute race feels ever so slightly more towards that endurance window. And for a lot of these drivers, they won't necessarily race races of this length. So it's a really interesting race to watch in terms of how drivers piece together their racecraft, because they're not necessarily used to having to make some of these decisions. Waiting back and sitting a little while longer in the slipstream can help you. There is still 75 minutes of this race left to run. Pit stops are still probably over half an hour away in terms of the thought process. So what Daniel Thomas is doing here, being patient and calm, is going to really help him towards the end of the race and really shows a level of maturity that would really show why he could go on to be a champion in the series.
Still 4 champions to be decided, in case you're just joining us, in the Motorsport UK Esports GT Challenge. At the moment, the championship leaders in 3 of our 4 classes are actually leading this race right now as well. Adam Watson, French Sikorsky and Kieran Sharp. Joe Coffin is the leader of the GT4 AM class. He's currently 5th in this race. Just see him in the background there, behind Ethan Marone. And actually, this is all one big group at the moment. So Marone is first in this group in the darker yellow Mercedes. Then Brown is in the brighter yellow. Then Bugembe in the Cayman that's got its wipers on for some reason, even though it's not raining. Then 4th in the line, it is Luca Monroe, who had a podium finish last week, and Joe Coffin, who is currently series leader. Top 5 altogether in GT4 AM. However, I do feel this is the same situation as GT4 Pro. I'm not sure what it is about these GT4s compared to the GT3s, but they're a lot more willing to be strategic and less willing to overtake each other in the first period of the race.
Yeah, it's a lot more considered, isn't it, right now, from the GT4s, and we'll have to see how long that continues, but it's going to keep it very interesting towards the front of these trains. Ethan Marone, David Brown, nothing to split them, as is the same between Sharp and Thomas. In the background.
Didn't last very long. Didn't last very long at all. Luca Monroe tried to get down the inside of Joshua Bugembe there, who has been as high as 2nd, and so that does make you wonder whether he's struggling for speed right now. It's the classic move, isn't it, turn 4? Go a little bit faster through turn 3, narrow yourself up for turn 4 and try and fire down the inside, but Bugembe saw it coming.
Yeah, and luckily he was able to fend it off, but you can just see how difficult it is right now for Joshua to keep it under control coming in towards Brooklands and Luffield. Luca Monroe really is lurking and ready to pounce and make a move, maybe on the exit through Woodcote they go. Luca Monroe may have a bit of a go in towards Copse, but you have to be very, very brave with not much of a speed advantage for him right now as they come down the national pit straight, and they will be line astern once again. But this group at the front of the GT4 rounds really is incredible. 1.4 seconds between the top 5.
Yeah, it's remarkable stuff, although it could get split apart if this continues for 3rd place in GT4 AM. Luca Monroe, the one applying the pressure. Bugembe, a Cayman in a sea of Mercedes in GT4 AM. Certainly up the front of this race anyway. Look at that, Monroe trying to stay in the slipstream as much as possible here for maybe a going towards Stowe Corner. And he does not brake late enough, although he shapes to the inside. Doesn't brake late enough into the fast right-hander to do anything this time round. Meanwhile, Daniel Thomas gets past Kieran Sharp for the lead in GT4 Pro. Weren't expecting that, but now he assumes the position that he held through the first half of last week's race.
Yeah, now as it stands, it would be a tie championship. That's just how much it can swing. Was 12 points of an advantage for Kieran Sharp. Now it's absolutely nothing. And let's see how it happened for him. Was it a bit of a mistake? Was there contact? Because it doesn't look like there's a big run out of Stowe Corner. Maybe it's just a bit of a surprise. Maybe it is indeed getting towards the inside line, getting it stopped onto the apex. That's absolutely textbook work from Daniel Thomas to get himself into the lead of the race again.
I think once he'd seen Thomas shape to the inside like that, Sharp wasn't very interested in holding him off anymore. And he's now more than willing to follow. But I don't know how you'd be feeling as Kieran Sharp at the moment. Momentum going away from you. Traditional wisdom would suggest you stay behind at this stage in the race and try and come past him later on after the pit stop phase. But that didn't work last week at all. Daniel Thomas won the race despite leading the field around. So I'm not sure how he'd be feeling here, if he'll be feeling especially pleased about trailing his rival, or if he'll even know what to do about his main rival here in the penultimate round.
That's almost the risk that comes with a short championship, because you've only just started really getting into it in the first 3 weeks, and you've felt yourself going well. I mean, Kieran Sharp's won the opening 2 races of a 5-round championship, and all of a sudden you may be in a tie championship going into the final round, even though he's finished 2nd in the other 2. I mean, that's the kind of conundrum he's in, but at least you can really see for his sake that the pace difference is very minimal to none between Thomas and Sharp. Thomas may be looking to get to the front to try and see if he can break away, feel like he has a little bit more pace to unlock in that that number 60 car. Kieran Chop, though, just keeping him on that tight leash. And you can just tell that they know it's a championship between them, that there's no real consideration that the likes of Christian Mennies could get himself involved. As it stands, Mennies would be 44 points back going into the final round, meaning he's in contention, but realistically he's not. Obviously the top two would have to crash for him to come through. So they know it's almost a duel right towards the end, and they just keep watching each other. It's fascinating.
Traffic for the first time for the race leaders. You might see it in the background for Adam Watson. Mike Barber's been applying the pressure periodically in this one, but now the pressure is going to come from up front here as the GT4s are in the way. Diving immediately down the inside. Oh, there's an altercation immediately here for Adam Watson, who's side to side with one of the Mercedes. Oh my word, these GT4s are not going to give an inch, and nor would they. Here they come onto the front straight. Aiden Carter, meanwhile, got past Cooper there briefly, just as the traffic is coming up quickly. These guys know that being in front of whoever you're behind right now is a benefit coming into the traffic for the first time. Carter couldn't quite do it that time round, though.
Really probing, though. Is there any kind of sending towards the inside of Village? There is a big send. There's an inside line for Aiden Carter. Just about going to have the just the overlap in towards entry in the loop. Let's see if there's any kind of on the inside line, and you bet that there is a little bit of contact as well. But Ben Cooper defending the position once again, and Aiden Carter going to have to find somewhere else yet again to make a move. But the difficulty is, here comes the traffic, and there's a big gaggle that they're about to come up to.
There is a huge amount of traffic coming up here. Carter even trying to make it 3 wide in this move on one of the GT4s immediately in towards Brooklands there. Don't forget the speed difference between these cars is not very big at all. The benefit, of course, they will only have to come through on some of them twice over the course of the day, much like we saw at Spa, although it is going to be a lot closer to having to lap them all 3 times, and especially those at the front of GT4 Pro are really going to be unclear about how many laps they're going to do over the course of this race, because it's quite close whether they'll be lapped another time or not. Here they come through the traffic again here. That is Cooper getting through, and Carter does not. So Andrew Pike now going to be the one putting the pressure on, at this time in the Corvette. And you'll notice that the lead gap overall as well has just extended out because of traffic for the first time. That can happen. Will Watson be able to get caught up in traffic a little bit later, and Barber capitalise on that? We'll see. But the gap has quadrupled effectively from what it was earlier on.
Yeah, and you can. It goes to your point, doesn't it, about how much it can make a difference of being the lead car meeting the traffic, because the exponential gain that you can receive really is huge if you negotiate your way through safely and smoothly, which is what we're seeing generally from a lot of drivers right now. 3-car train led by Andrew Pike, brought up by Franek Sikorsky in that green Ferrari, of course leading the GT3 A+ by 13 seconds now. Incredible lead for him, as he is still the only driver with a lead over a second, with Barber coming back in towards Watson, and it's 13. Incredible stuff for him. But it is interesting also to see that despite some of these leaders coming through, it's not making necessarily a big difference in terms of some of the gaps in the GT class. But having said that, that's a big old spin.
That is a big spin for Andrew Pike through turn 2, and he will drop down the field. He's actually behind Matt Teverton now. It feels like there's somebody else missing as well. No, there isn't. I'm imagining it. Pike is down to 9th overall then, and 8th place in class, including Franek Sikorsky, actually one of the drivers who's got through on that occasion because of that big spin. We'll have a replay of in a couple of moments' time through turn number 2. But traffic certainly does inject life into these races, there's no doubt about that. Adam Watson's gap did briefly come down there, but it's back up again, by the way, as we have a look at the incident. Bit of side-to-side contact. Looks like Carl Chase. Don't know if it is or not. Might be, but bit of side-to-side contact really. GT4 on GT3.
Yeah, not necessarily what you want to see, but I think it's the only moment that we've seen all the way through the opening pass of traffic, which is always nice to have in the back of your mind. Side by side, though, is not nice to have in the front of your mind as you go through Maggots and Beck. It's really tricky to nail this one. Joe Coffin involved as he looks to try and keep himself inside the top 5 or gain a position as well. Looking for P4 as they run on towards this hangar straight, and he's going to have a good run here. Outside line where he's initially looking like he's going to have to go. Will he dive back to the inside? We'll wait and see, but careful, because here comes the GT3s and some of the leading GT3s as well.
Through the middle, and Carter follows. That puts Coffin off, really, from going around the outside. So he should have stayed a bit tighter to Munro there, and he could have maybe made him move a bit more easily. But now he'll fancy his chances in towards the chicane again. That's Conkley in the Audi trying to come through, and that might just slow Luca Monroe at the wrong moment. In fact, in slow coughing more, and he can't make the move as a result of this big GT3 group battles its way past the leaders in GT4 AM. Have a look at this in towards turn number 1. Carter again, not sure quite where to go in towards the first corner. Monroe now forced wide by Cheverton, and that will allow Coffin to come through. But, free wide on the outside for Pike as he immediately goes into battle at the corner he spun at only 1 lap ago. Still side by side between the two. Up ahead, Bugembe has had a chance to overtake because of the traffic you were seeing in the background. Oh no! It's a pile-up down at turn 4. Joshua Bugembe is involved and he's dropped behind his championship rival. Conkley's gone backwards. Cooper's dropped down the field. Carter's down to 6th and off the road. Carter's got big damage. Is that Corvette missing a wheel? I can't quite see for the moment. It's certainly damaged and down on 1 corner for now as the Corvette trundles back to pit lane. Yeah, well, it has got all its wheels as far as I can see from here, but a big pile-up. Now, how did this come about? Cooper was in front, as we've seen. Carter tried to take the initiative. There was contact. They spun directly in front of the rest of the field. That's the leaders in GT4 AM they spun in front of there.
Yeah, not what they needed whatsoever. Looked like, well, from that angle, there could have been a line down the inside. We'll have to see from this aerial camera shot. Is there any real hope of Aiden Carter making the move? Nowhere nearly alongside into the corner. Well, I think they'll both be blaming each other after that one, but you can see the effect it has on the cars coming through behind. So many, such congestion down there as you had all of the GT4 AM leaders coming through, of which there was that really tight group. So it's given a bit of a break to some of them as the gaps have really exploded after that.
They have. They exploded all over the place, actually, because of the last few moments. Now, will it happen in GT4 Pro as well? The good thing is that the GT3s have been dispersed, really, before they actually come through now. So the GT4s might find it a bit easier, Pros that is, to facilitate these faster machines coming through. So Francis Sikorsky will be first, then it'll be Cheverton, then it will be Pike going fast as well. And Sikorsky goes inside of one, outside of the other, or tries to. Now we'll get to the inside of in time for turn 3. Cheverton will do the same. Thomas has got to watch out, and he did. He saw him coming there on the inside line, otherwise it could have been trouble. And now he can take a defensive line from Sharp as well, who's not able to get anywhere in terms of making an overtake for turn 4. And the GT4s, I would say, get away with it, but the fact that they're so much spread out in GT3 has certainly helped them.
Yeah, it really has now, well, immediately widened out. The first 20 minutes, 25 minutes of this race, really tightly packed, but all of a sudden now, the gaps are just that little bit bigger, and I think some of the drivers, towards the front, are going to feel a bit safer. Not Sikorsky, though. He's got the biggest lead of anybody, but he's had a bit of a moment down in towards Brooklands, and that's not what he needs at all. The confidence should be there for the number 46, because he has that huge advantage to Andy Chell, who, by the way, is nowhere near him in the championship. He wouldn't be concerned about the number 5 finishing in P2, but he's got to be careful, because he can't afford those mistakes to keep creeping in.
He really delayed Daniel Thomas as well, actually. He would have been shouting at him to get on with it. There have been some retirements, unfortunately, after those incidents in the first few moments. Rachel Conkley from that most recent one is out of the race. Jim Fox is already out. Gillen Mystery, the only GT4, out of the day, and Jake Pitt as well was already out of the race. Retired after about 10 minutes, maybe less, unfortunately, in this race today. And so the retirements list is going to continue to stack up, as we see in the background there. Ben Cooper now on the back of James King, and he seems to be the only one really from that group that we saw for 4th place actually going again here. Cooper's down to 8th overall. Aiden Carter down to 15th overall in the field. And so it's those two who have really taken a big delay here, but you'd expect that as well. I think you put it as it is at the time. They're probably going to blame each other, although I would say Carter was quite a long way alongside, and Cooper didn't necessarily give room on the inside, so maybe there is a case to answer for Ben Cooper. We'll see what the stewards say, of course, but it was there's no doubting the consequences for everybody, including them two themselves, actually, both significantly delayed.
Oh, absolutely so. Yeah, and I think I'd agree with you. There did look like there was a gap to the inside, and walked into, but then Ben Cooper will say that he'd already started turning and he wasn't going to turn out of the corner. So it's just one of those, isn't it? I think we can wait and see what it said about it after the race, but there's definitely going to be arguments for both sides, no doubt about that. But Cooper is trying to come back through, and he needs to. I mean, you said it earlier on, he needs to be on the podium if Adam Watson's going to win this race. And being down in P7 is clearly absolutely nowhere near. In terms of time, right now, Ben Cooper is about 20 seconds off of the podium, and to gain that back in an hour on pure pace through traffic, that really is going to be a very tall task for him. And Adam Watson's going to be feeling very, very happy, I think, with how it's gone in the opening half an hour.
Pittman versus Chell is exchanging positions in the battle for second in GT3 AM, and they're not clear of GT4 traffic yet either, by the way. Briefly, Andy Chell got his nose in front, as you will have seen on the tower, but Pittman is back again in front. Andy Chell not really anywhere involved in the championship fight in GT3 AM. It is much more about Sikorsky and Pittman as we cross over half an hour complete now in this race. Still an hour left in round 4 at Silverstone as Ben Cooper nearly has a look up the inside of King in towards Stowe Corner, and again not quite able to do it. It's bizarre for Cooper to have the shoe on the other foot now. He's the one trying to make the overtakes in a fairly straight line speed deficient Porsche.
It's necessarily the task you really want to be handed, is it? But it's the task that he has to try and overcome in the final hour of this race. Side by side, nearly a little bit of contact as they make their way off of Club Corner as they cross the start-finish line. Inside line, though, should see him ahead and back up into the top 6 ahead of James King, but I don't think James King was necessarily going to fight that one too hard, especially considering some of the fighting that Ben Cooper has to be doing throughout the rest of this race. Ben King, it's fair to say, James King, not as close to Ben Cooper in the championship, and really, I think just at this point, racing for a bit of pride rather than the championship.
I think that's what most people are feeling here outside of Adam Watson's big lead. He is well out front on his own right now, by the way. So there's another exchange there a bit further down the field, although I couldn't tell you who it was from because it was a long way down, and it wasn't for any of the major positions. This is in GT4 AM. Let's assess some of the damage back here. Ethan Marone is leading the race still. He was the only one not caught up, I think. Maybe he was, but he was certainly least delayed time-wise. David Brown is in second place, a second and a half behind. And the group for third is reforming here. Luca Monroe at the front, and then it is Joe Coffin and Joshua Bigembe, the championship rivals. And Cole Chase is not that far behind either. He wasn't involved in the incident, but he has benefited from it because he's caught up to these guys. But championship rivals are now 4th and 5th and running together.
Yeah, interested to see how this can almost develop throughout the rest of this race, because as it stands, Ethan Marone winning the race put himself ahead of Joshua Bigembe, and it would mean that he would be the closest rival into Joe Coffin. In fact, with Luca Monroe and David Brown also provisioned on the podium, they close up as well in that battle for at least second in the championship, where, as it stands, there are 5 drivers at the top of the championship within 40 points, 41 points that is. So it is very tight up there, and these moves and the swings may seem insignificant now, but even if it's, a 6-point swing to a rival could be absolutely crucial. And Joe Coffin, with a good run at Luca Monroe here, may find himself on the podium yet again and maybe put more points between himself and the rest of the pack.
Great run from Coffin as he gets up to the outside now of Luca Monroe. He's quite wide though. He needs to bring it back a little bit to squeeze Monroe here, and he's got the exit quite nicely here. And Joshua Bigembe has to follow through if he can, and Monroe recognises that. He actually goes back down the inside of the championship leader. Monroe not wanting to give up this podium place, but what he's done is he's given himself the outside for the next 2 corners, and that has allowed Joshua Bigembe to slide through. Very smart racing from Bigembe, who didn't do a whole lot himself there. He just placed his car in the right position and slipped through when the opportunity came, and that was very good driving indeed as he tries to stay with his closest championship rival.
Yeah, really opportunistic move there from Bigembe, what he needed to do as well, and now he can keep the pressure up on Joe Coffin. I think Coffin was going to be hoping that Luca Monroe could act as a bit of a buffer, maybe hold up Joshua for a little bit, but now you can see how much desire Bigembe's got to get back through on his championship rival as they run their way through. I think there's also a move that's happening in the GT4 Pros. Here it is. Wharton is trying to get up into the top 2 and displace the championship leader as they run their way through. Kieran Sharp's got to defend here as they exit Woodcote.
nightmare stuff for Kieran Sharp, as he's now stuck side by side with one of his rivals. The McLaren not wanting to go through there in GT3 either. That's pretty gracious of them, to be fair. Now Sharp on the inside, trying to hold off Wharton, who's on the outside through Cobb's corner. Would be a spectacular move if he can get that done, but he can't. The McLaren will go through, and they will squeeze each other here in towards the Magnussen-Beckett section, and Wharton just lift off. He doesn't want side-to-side contact there with Kieran Sharp, but I don't think Sharp would have been expecting that move to come.
No, but you could see how closely packed the top three are. Christian Mennies as well is fourth just off the back in that red, white and blue entry, just coming off of Chapel Curve. Incredible to see how close these four are. As we get towards the middle phase of this race, Sharp now maybe going on the offensive, trying to almost undo the pressure he was under for P2. He's now back into the race lead once again.
Well, that's Daniel Thomas losing the lead into Stowe Corner, and that's Kieran Sharp wanting to make the moves now. I think it is probably a reaction to being attacked there for his second place. He realises he can't afford to lose any more places, otherwise Thomas could really scamper off up the road. And so the safest place to be for the moment is in the lead. 35 minutes gone, just over. And so these guys are a long way from pit stop safety, but as soon as that one driver in this group starts to make moves, or at least try to, then the battling sort of kicks off all throughout. That's why we weren't seeing very much at Spa, because nobody really kicked it off. Nobody wanted to be the one to start it all. This time round, though, we've got Ned Wharton in third place, trying to make that overtake, and now all of a sudden we've got a real race on here of four drivers who do actually want to overtake each other.
Yeah, which is a bit of a conundrum for what we've seen in some of the other classes and for what we saw last week, really, in the GT4. So it's really great to see. But Ned Wharton getting himself involved. He comes into this race too far back in the championship to be mathematically in contention after only having 34 points on the board. He's some 95 points behind the championship leader with 90 left on the table, and so really, genuinely is racing for pride here. But with Sharp and Thomas fighting between themselves, they don't really need Ned Wharton getting himself involved in this battle. And I can imagine they're both going to be seeing there's a bit of a parasite on the back of this train, because he isn't in contention and yet could completely change the outcome for either one of the drivers at the front.
On board with Christian Mennies as well, by the way, in fourth place, who is just watching on. I think he's the only driver in this group who's really not interested in overtaking. The rest of them seem to be. Though Sharp is beginning to put the pace on here. And just watch the lap time as they come across the line next time round, because I think this could be quite quick. As he tries to stretch out the group. Instead of playing few games, maybe he's just going to play for pace instead. We will see. So make their way up towards Stowe Corner now. Uninterrupted by the traffic, as they have been for quite a long time, and they will be for quite a long time in the future as well. Look at Sharp, nearly a second in front of Thomas already. 9/10 of a second right now. This is some real pace from Kieran Sharp. His best lap time currently is a 2:10.1. It could be a 2:09 here from Sharp, or is it a slow one from Thomas? It's difficult to tell as they now go over the line. It is the best lap, although there was an off-track in it. It was a 2:10.0, and Thomas could not stay with it that time round. 6/10 slower, and the gap's 1.1.
Yeah, this could really be a crucial gap now for Kieran Sharp. Daniel Thomas was leading this race and felt, well, I'm sure, relatively comfortable. All of a sudden, that's changed around in a couple of laps, a couple of minutes even, and now he's got a lot of work to do to keep himself close to Kieran Sharp. If he loses that slipstream, if he loses the benefit of keeping close to the championship leader, then he may find himself dropping a little bit too far back, and then with the championship margin, it's going to feel very difficult to overturn in 7 days' time. They've got some traffic coming through as well, which isn't going to help, but really big moments now in this GT4 Pro Championship, with Kieran Sharp turning that defence into attack, and clearly it spurred him on to making this big gap now.
Yeah, he's absolutely lit the afterburners, and he's off in the GT4 Pro lead. That's only going to stretch apart the field here now. Oh, that was quite close. Who was that? John Earl it was. Was it? No, probably not. Anyway, one of the BMWs very nearly running straight into the back of Thomas there, I think. Aidan Carter also comes through. Has been in the pit lane so far, so an early stop, but that doesn't discount you in this race. You've got a very wide pit window indeed, which is now open. You just don't often want to pit in early and get a whole load of fuel on board compared to everybody else. This is the lead in GT4 AM, where David Brown is back to Ethan Marone. and the 4 in behind are coming in as well. So it looks like we all might be back together again, as it was before the crash and the pile-up in a few moments' time.
Interesting way to get ourselves towards the back end of the race. Difficult to really pick out in a lot of these battles which way to look, because David Brown now on the offensive for the lead in the GT4 AM class as they run their way down in towards Stoke Corner. The 27 hasn't been leading for quite some time. Marone has controlled this race, but the inside line is going to be what takes David Brown to the lead in the AM class. Ethan Marone really needs this race to stay in any kind of contention in terms of the championship, but Brown now with the advantage, and Marone will actually go into the pit lane, I do believe.
He did. I'm not sure what's happened to him because he's suddenly lost a lot of speed. Meanwhile, we've seen Bekembe past Munro as well, or sorry, defending from Munro, I should say. He's already ahead, but was defending a little bit there, and that's allowing Joe Coffin to get a bit of an advantage. Don't forget, Bekembe is second in the championship to Coffin, and he could really do with gaining some of those points back here today, otherwise it could be trouble in the championship for him as well. And there goes Munro, very nearly. I thought he was going to have a dive down the inside. He certainly broke late enough. Now he might do it, turn 4, and he does. There's contact. Joshua Bekembe to the outside of the corner. He'll be furious about that as he's dumped to the outside of turn 4 and back down to 5th place.
A really, really important moment. Bekembe can't afford any kind of moment realistically. Coffin now up into 2nd place, going from strength to strength here and less than a second off of the lead. Bekembe needs to avoid these little mistakes. Now behind Carl Chase, well, ironically then has to chase him down and overtake him and get himself towards the front of the field, because all of a sudden this championship in the GT4 rounds has gone from being relatively close with 5 or 6 drivers looking like they could still be in contention to Joe Coffin maybe potentially even winning it tonight.
It's big contact. Was Bekembe coming across on Munro, or was Munro steaming in too quickly, getting into the Cayman? That is going to be argued about between the two of them, I would say. We'll see who comes out on top in that argument, as it were, as we go back to the fight for 4th. All these groups we've seen have incidents and sort of coming back together again all of a sudden. This is further down for Ashley Toff and Ash Hill, side by side into the Magnussen Beckett section. Now, is that Brandon Loudon behind them as well? Might be. He's not in the same class as the other two. However, is looking for a way past. It is indeed Loudon. And we'll look for an overall overtake here, maybe, on the bright purple Mercedes driven by Ash Hill. No move made this time round, though. Oh, well, not from Loudon, but a surprise one from Hill. Very nearly on the inside of Toft, and there was inches between them there in towards Stoke Corner.
Could have been a lot worse than that, and a bit of a spring of a surprise move, you could say, as they worked their way through. Car off the road. Was that? I'm not sure who that was. Going off the road, as we've seen side-by-side action through the final corner as they come through Club. Ash Hill back ahead of Ashley Toft, and these two really going at it, aren't they, as they make their way onto yet another lap as they reach nearly the halfway point of this race.
Yeah, Hill looks a bit quicker to me, so might well now get away. Let's see. Tough not going to give up in towards turn 3 by the looks of it. A dive. Oh, and there's space given, but not enough. A bar, just shoulder bars there from Toft on Ash Hill. And Toft is back through again. So that battle will continue on with all the physicality that comes with it. 47 minutes to go, as you say, nearly halfway. And David Brown still leads in GT4 AM, which has seen a lot more pit stops than the last few moments, by the way, including for Luca Munro, who pitted last time round. Bekembe stays out and now moves up to 4th place in the race. But that will change a little bit later on. So we approach halfway. We're seeing more earlier pit stops than we're used to in GT4 AM.
We are, aren't we? Because we've seen them run almost as long as they possibly can for quite some time, but they're not doing that at the moment. So interesting to see if that has any bearing on how this race is going to run right towards the end. But for the time being, at least, the likes of Joe Coffin, David Brown at the front of the field in the GT4 AMs continue onwards, and if they can go at least one more time after this one, then they will get over that halfway distance and will easily get towards the end of this race after their pit stop phase. They'd expect them to be running the fuel down as low as they can, but Joe Coffin's just been working his way through the field. He may have been saving a little bit of fuel whilst being in some of the trains, but he has really showed a turn of pace when he's needed to. And you just feel like it's only a matter of time before he gets to the lead of this race and puts himself in an even stronger position in terms of the championship. Difficult to really say where everybody is after some pit stops have come in, some have not just yet. But when everything shakes out, I think we're going to get a good picture of where we sit in all 4 of these championships as we get towards the end of this race and, of course, the end of the season.
Oh, dear me. Brown was all over that curve there as they come onto the front straight, and Coffin is right in behind that 27 Mercedes now in towards turn 1. Hugely over the inside curve, and you don't often want to be there at all through that final corner. In towards turn 3 now. David Brown will surely have to go on the defensive. Will Coffin go down the inside at turn 4? No. You just wonder whether some of these drivers have seen enough through that corner now to be put off actually diving down the inside at turn 4, or the loop as it's called, because of the incidents that we've seen so far. Coffin certainly wasn't interested that time round. Doesn't look too interested in towards Brooklands this time round either. Oh no, he is. He does have a late look down the inside, but it's only going to give him the outside for Luffield if Brown can stay there. Coffin's going to try and shut the door, but can't. The overlap was still there, and that's exactly what Brown had to do. Hold on and keep the overlap, because the next few corners are to the right, and that is going to give him a good advantage. Having said that, Coffin's got the exit, and he's got the lead. The championship leader now in the lead of this race here at Silverstone in GT4 AM.
Yeah, and David Brown really can't do much about it as they work their way towards Copse Corner. Nothing that you can do to have any kind of send into such a high-speed flick that is Copse Corner. And David Brown's going to have to sit and wait behind. There may be a chance as they make their way in towards Stowe, but he's going to have to keep himself right on that rear bumper through Maggots and Beckett's, a task that more than difficult to do in these machines and in these circumstances. Championship leader is ahead of you. He's just made the move. Can you keep him right under pressure and maybe make him look in the mirrors as you run your way in towards a big overtaking spot at Stowe? I think he's close enough to almost look for a go, but the question is he going to be able to gain a couple of tenths? I'm not too sure. They found it in the background of some GT3s, lapped some GT4s, but there is no move, and Coffin, I think, may be, for the time being, feeling like he's just about got away.
Well, is Brown going to do an immediate response to this by pitting in? No, he's going to trail him for now as they go into the final chicane. And it's going to be an interesting race between these two as pit stops. I think that's in GT3 have come in the background. Yes, Mike Barber's in. So Adam Watson is just about to come past these guys and come through on a whole load more GT4 traffic actually as well. But Barber doesn't want to do that, and perhaps smartly decided to come into pit lane before they have to do any overtaking.
Yeah, that could be a good idea, and it's always that balance and the management of the traffic in terms of not just how you're able to get through them on the circuit, but whether you can use strategy to avoid losing a bit of time comes in so crucially. So we'll have to see if that works out in the end for them as we run our way through to start yet another lap here at turn number 1. And we haven't been short of action all race long here, have we? Because there has been action in all 4 classes consistently throughout this race. This time we're looking at whether we can see many moves occur in a difficult part of the racetrack, but for leading positions in the GT3 Pro class, and a podium spot up for grabs. Definitely not something to be frowned upon.
Now then, down the Wellington straight they come. There's a little look from the Corvette here of Andrew Pike on the back of Cheverton, and the Ferrari in behind is indeed Franit Sikorsky in the lead of GT3 and by some distance right now. Having said that, to clinch the title today, we'd have to finish 8th or lower in the GT3 AM class. Well, there's only 8 still running, so it's going to be pretty difficult for him to seal it today. As Andrew Pike just sits in behind Cheverton, not himself, in this fight for 3rd place. A couple of GT4s up ahead. Just interrupt their battle now, and Toff just moves over, maybe discouraging Pike from doing it. There's a flash of the lights, and he's going to be stuck in behind the BMW now. Franit Sikorsky is going to try and come through into the Beckett section, and out of Chapel they now go. Where's Pike going to go here? Can he make it 3 wide maybe? Oh, there's a squeeze again. Big squeeze there. And, well, there's the weave across. There's the flash of the lights from Toff. Said, I told you not to do that. He tried to anyway. There's the classic argument between GT3 and GT4 drivers.
Yeah, they're not going to fight each other on the same piece of tarmac for very long unless there's some kind of contact as they work their way back down towards the final couple of corners. Sikorsky now having that advantage as they run their way through. A couple more pitters coming in the background, just trying to avoid this melee at the moment. But I think it's very clear to see that there's not going to be too many. Well, Andrew Pike's not going to be happy. Let's be real about that as they run their way through and out towards the start finish line once again. Is Sikorsky doing very defensive lines? Let him back through. Not too sure what's happened there.
So, Pike back through again now. And Sikorsky almost giving that place up. Maybe a slowdown or something, I don't really know what went on there, as they now pass another GT4 car. The problem for Pike is that that's done quite some damage to his race time, and I know Cheverton's come in, so it's difficult to measure now, but even so, that will have done some damage. Cooper alongside Cheverton, that's the inter pit lane, as you will have seen in the bottom of your screen there. Well, that's what you were seeing on the bottom of your screen. Apart from that, we have still got 31 drivers in this race. Brandon Loudon, unfortunately, joining those out of the race with 50 minutes gone. The race flying by this afternoon at Silverstone. It's been a fully entertaining one in the Motorsport UK Esports GT Challenge. This is Pike just in front of Sikorsky. We are very much halfway through a pit stop cycle, so there aren't very many battles right now, but there's ones that are going to crop up again later on as the pit stop cycle figures itself out. We are, for example, still waiting for Adam Watson to make the first and only pit stop of the day.
Yeah, and when he comes in, I think we'll get a good sense of where the GT3s are at in terms of those pit stops. And also, Frank Sikorsky, you could count into that as well. It's going along very nicely indeed. Not really losing a great deal of time, even to the overall race leaders. He's about, give or take, 25 seconds off the overall race lead, which is really impressive to see from the outside. In fact, he's closer to the overall race leader than anybody in his own class is to him, which just goes to show how dominant that he's been so far. Pit lane, though, is calling for Andrew Pike as he comes down and will come around the final corner behind those buildings. Where is he? Where is he? There he is, as he'll get himself into his box in the not too distant future. And I think pretty soon we'll have had a vast majority of the field down pit road.
Certainly in GT3 that is true. Yep. GT4 almost nobody's been in yet, although Joshua Bigembe is now in to join Luca Monroe, Ethan Marone and Matty Wild of those who have been in. Marone is 16 seconds behind Monroe, so I get the feeling we're going to have something similar to what we did last week, where the pit stop times are vastly different in GT4 for somewhat unexplained reasons, and the battles that we enjoyed in the first half of the race may not well transpire again. Joshua Bigembe will want to get out ahead of Luca Monroe, though. Won't want to see him again after the incident they had in the loop just before the pit stop phase. Doesn't look like he is going to be so lucky, though. It looks like Luca Monroe is going to get ahead here. There goes Bigembe, shortening the distance as much as possible, but he is indeed behind Monroe, and he's behind by a few seconds. His pit stop was about 1.5 seconds longer.
Yeah, that's going to be a really big swing then. You know, the fine margins in races that you don't necessarily think about when going into it are, you know, those little pit stop moments that, you know, you're thinking about the pit stop. You don't necessarily think it could be that important, but even a swing of that 1.5 seconds can be crucial when you're looking back at a race. You know, you might get stuck behind a little bit more traffic. You'll find them at an inopportune moment, and it can all add up, which is always difficult to overcome, especially psychologically. Dave Young trying to overcome, Nathan Anstis trying to overcome Dave Young as they run their way to the final couple of corners. Anstis to the outside line. He's going to find no room around the outside, but it's looking like he's going to find a move somewhere, because that's a much better line through the Vale chicane. Just a shame that he can't quite get the release through club that he was looking for, as I'd like to be able to go for it a little bit further up the field. But very tight battles still continuing here, and we've really come to expect, haven't we?
Absolutely. So, rare sighting a couple of these McLarens in this field, unfortunately. Not too many of them in GT4 especially, actually, but GT3 as well. As Sharp now is going to be delayed by Anstis. I think that's Kieran Sharp in the Aston Martin GT4, it is. And he's just going to lose a few tenths of a second there as Anstis was hesitating through traffic. That won't delight the race leader in GT4 Pro, because he's having a wondrous battle now between himself and Daniel Thomas. They're not wheel-to-wheel racing as such, but they are trading lap times that are unspeakably fast. They are way quicker than anybody else in the field. Wharton 4 seconds behind, Menzies over 11 seconds behind, and that's all been stretched out in the not too distant past actually when Kieran Sharp suddenly decided to turn on the speed, and it's only Daniel Thomas who can vaguely live with him. The lap times they're trading are quite astonishing.
Yeah, it just goes to show how and why they have been such impressive competitors so far this season in the early stages, and as we get into the late stages as well. Definitely been the closest championship of the four, and intrigued to see how it's going to end over the end of this race, and of course next week at Brands Hatch. And Stis we're still looking at, but he's dropped off the back of Dave Young a little bit. But more on that GT4 AM class, I wanted to mention that with Joe Coffin leading the race, and with Joshua McGann all the way down in P8 and Ethan Marone down in P9, the door is more than wide open right now for Joe Coffin. He currently has a championship winning margin in the live points, which would be over David Brown right now. Just to put into perspective how good it has been for David Brown, let alone for Joe Coffin here. So really big swings, and it was looking so close at the start of the day.
Worth noting, of course, that there are a lot of pit stops yet to happen in GT4, but
yes, there are.
But the point is there could be championships won today in pretty convincingly actually as well. Not only in GT4 AM, but yes, it's in GT3 Pro as well. We will still wait for those GT4 AM pit stops rather. Top 4 overall still yet to come in as well right now, by the way, along with Ricky Pittman, who's 6th, behind Mike Barber, who's already made his pit stop today. Adam Watson's still leading by 8 seconds over Alfie Nichols, and that is a gap that's only extending as well. Watson is having just gotten through on a lot of the GT4, sort of right before they all came in and started to go all over the circuit. He got through them sort of for the last time as a group before they all pitted. Now he's expected to pit at some point, but it looks like at the moment the race leader is just going to run the tank dry until he runs out effectively, and then come into pit lane for his only stop.
And that does benefit you as a racing driver. You know, the lower that you can run the fuel tank, the less weight there is in the car, the lighter, the nippier the car can feel in some of the parts of the circuit, particularly as we've just gone through with Maggott and Beckett. So it's definitely a favourable strategy for drivers in terms of just keeping that car getting lower and lower on the fuel. Of course, in any race, cars will improve in speed, if you forget about the tyres, of course, will improve on speed by default as you go through the race, as you're dropping that fuel load throughout the race. And I think that, you know, and well, we know this is what drivers do race after race to try and get themselves that little bit more speed. Is the longer that they can run these cars at these lower fuel levels, you know, the better the speed's going to be throughout the race. The earlier pit stop, yes, and they give them a bit of an undercut, but they have to run on those higher fuel levels for much longer, and so don't get that effect later on in the race. So that is what these guys are thinking about doing. It's worked for them so far this season, likely to work again tonight.
We'll continue to follow these two McLarens for now. Well, it is the only, well, it's not the only GT3 battle actually, but it's one of the closer ones. Matt Cheverton is just ahead of Ben Cooper right now for 6th place in GT3 Pro, which is arguably closer actually, and those two have already stopped. Worth noting that Andrew Pike was near them before, but his pit stop was a few seconds shorter, so he's a few seconds ahead of these guys, but it's very much recovery time for Ben Cooper after the trials and tribulations of the opening stint of the race. He's got half an hour to put some of those battles right now and regain some of those places.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting phase, the next 10-15 minutes, with drivers finalising their pit stops and almost getting themselves aware of their surroundings as they get into this final stint. And then you get that final 15-20 minute sprint to the end where drivers, take the gloves off, really do go for it, and battling side by side. They're not going to sit around and wait like they may have done an hour previously. And that's, I think, kind of where we sit as we get into this part of the race. Ben Cooper, of course, with a lot of moves to do if he wants to keep himself in any kind of contention for his championship challenge, and getting through a Matt Cheverton is target number 1, albeit not going to help him out in the bigger picture.
Here is Cooper hiding, sheltering behind that Mustang, but it's not as powerful in a straight line, unfortunately. He can really gain on the brakes there. a little bit more nimble, lighter on its feet, as one of the lap cars pulls out the way. Adam Watson also comes in from the lead of the race, by the way, so that long stint out front has come to an end for Watson. You can imagine that it will be followed by some more pit stops, but not immediately from Alfie Nichols, who will go through and lead his first laps this season. The Porsche will now pull to a stop, and he'll hope that those who were near him before, the likes of Mike Barber, have not been able to gain the time on him. Now, Barber's pit stop was actually a little bit longer than some of the others who've already stopped, so I suspect that Watson will be out in the lead pretty comfortably here. As on the bottom of your screen, Mike Barber makes his way through the final corners of the lap. Watson will be coming into the last 5 seconds or so of his pit stop right now, even as Barber is only making his way into the final corner. There goes Watson, already out of the pit lane. His pit stop a lot shorter than Barber's, 10 seconds shorter in fact, and that's given him a fairly big lead now.
Yeah, exactly what he needs. And Adam Watson just continuing on his merry way and looking like he is getting ready to take the title here this evening. He had the best opportunity, it's fair to say, coming into this race. And as it stands, has a big old advantage to the drivers in behind. Ben Cooper has to gain quite a few more points if he wants to keep himself in contention. And really, for anybody else, they have to hope that Adam Watson has some kind of issue and drops down from the lead if they are to stay in contention, because it really is pretty much impossible for anybody else to stay close enough. But this has really been an impressive drive from the 291, because he's had that championship leader tag on him. He's had the awareness that the championship could be won tonight. He's just looked serene with everything around him and almost looked numb to that fact, and has just gone on and led the race in the manner that he's led all the races so far this season.
It's been a remarkable bit of dominance for him this season, and we will work out very soon whether, because the pit stops will finally be made for Alfie Nichols, we'll see whether it's going to be a championship winning position. But if Nichols gets out ahead of Cooper, then Watson is going to gain 21 points to add to his what's he already got, 32, and that will be more than enough to take the title here today. So then into the pit lane, there's Alfie Nichols. You'd imagine he'll be in front of Cooper, but we will wait and see as the second place man in the championship works his way through the S's now. It's worth noting that Aidan Carter, Rachel Conkley and Andrew Pike are all a bit further behind as well right now, so they're not going to be holding an advantage which they could take into Brands Hatch next week. Here comes Cheverton down the inside of Carl Chase. It's for just a bit of track positioning towards Stowe, and it does keep Cooper at bay for a little bit longer. Now, does Nichols even get ahead of Barber maybe here? Is his pit stop even going to be that short maybe? And it will. Well, Alfie Nichols is going to be second place. That's how long Mike Barber's pit stop was. In fact, it's the longest in the top 14 in GT3, and Alfie Nichols is going to be ahead of him by about 2 seconds.
Yeah, that's exactly what he would have wanted to see. Alfie Nichols in his first race of the season. It's going to give him a fantastic shot at least picking up a P2 here. I think the win may feel a little bit far off, but for a debut race of the season, P2 is absolutely nothing to be ashamed about, and really impressive to see him do so well so quickly. I think for Mike Barber, in his own personal championship fights, dropping down to P3 is a little bit more difficult for him in terms of the maths to get himself maybe into the top 2 in the championship, but it's still been a good drive for him, and one that I think he will go back, or look back on at the end of the season. I think that one of his best, quite frankly.
So, in this situation, Ben Cooper needs to be on the podium if he's to deny Adam Watson the title 1 round early. At the moment, Ben Cooper is half a minute off the lead and 15 seconds off of Mike Barber in that final spot on the podium. It's looking very, very bleak now for Cooper, and indeed anybody else to stay in touch, because even Andrew Pike is going to lose 15 points. He starts the day 41 behind. So he needs to, well, he can't do anything. He needs Watson to drop out of that lead in the last 27 minutes of the race. So GT3 pit stops have all now happened. They are continuing to happen in GT4, where Joe Coffin leads, and he is starting to extend the margin as well. 3 seconds now his lead. Maybe he is going to take a championship today as well.
Yeah, definitely a shout for him. There's a shout for a couple of them. And if nothing else, the likes of Sikorsky extending a championship advantage, even if the title looks a little bit far off. Thomas into the pit lane, though, now in the GT4 Pros. He blinks before Kieran Sharp. We've seen whoever fits second in that battle often come out on top, so Kieran Sharp may be feeling a little bit confident, but Daniel Thomas is down pit lane, and really, if worse comes to worse for him, without anything going, majorly wrong, would be P2, just on the pure pace. So I think he's always got that in the back of his mind. Oh my word!
Oh!
There's a massive defense. That's huge as they come towards turn number 1. Inside line maybe for Cooper on the back of Matt Cheverton, but Cheverton's defense aggressive but effective in the end.
That was unbelievable. The two of them chasing each other all over the road on turn 1, and now, or the first straight, I should say. Now Cheverton's on the inside for turn 4. Ben Cooper will have a look at the exit now. He's so close behind the Mustang. There's going to be no chance to really gain very much on the Wellington straight, but he will want a dive at Brooklands, especially after the pressure he's putting on. He's got to make it count, and he's going to go down the inside now into Brooklands, and he's not quite given the room there. Not quite given the room by the Mustang of Matt Cheverton, and so he retains 5th place. But what a battle between these two.
It'd be incredible to see how keen Ben Cooper is to get through. You'd expect that because Matt Cheverton really is standing in his way right now. Cooper knows he has to get on the podium, and we know that that's a long, long way off in terms of what is likely to be feasible. 15 seconds, 25 minutes. He was 20 seconds back 35 minutes ago. To gain 5 seconds in 35 minutes means that it's going to be difficult to gain 15 in 25. But he's always going to have that hope and the belief under him. To get through Matt Cheverton makes it that little bit easier, and if something does happen in front, gives him that extra position to maybe gain an extra couple of points. But let's see, is the runoff of Chapel Curve enough and down the Hanger Straight to have any kind of go at Stowe? Let's wait and see, but you'd have to say he's a little bit too far back for a send here, you'd think, but he's going to go for it nonetheless, or at least get in the mirrors. Nothing going to work out for him this time.
Meanwhile, in GT4, by the way, there are important pit stops going on. Last time round, Daniel Thomas came into the pit lane. This time round, Kieran Sharp is into pit lane. It could be a championship-defining pit stop here for the championship leader, Kieran Sharp, on the bottom of your screen. There you can see him just pulling into his box here. He's crawling into his box almost there. Now he will take on some fuel finally with 24 minutes to go. Thomas spent 50 seconds in the lane. That's the entire travel from entry to exit, including the stop time, actually getting service as well. Watson and Mendes carry on, but Kieran Sharp is still in pit lane. Now he's rolling. This is a similar amount of time in the box here from him. Thomas is going to be right around him now as he makes his way out of the pit lane. Where is Daniel Thomas in relation to Sharp? There is Thomas through the bottom of your screen. Here comes Sharp. His lead is going to be about as it was before. Not a large lead, but it is still a lead for Kieran Sharp.
Yeah, he will continue to feel confident in his championship position. Keeping Daniel Thomas behind, though, is now absolutely imperative. 23 minutes is no short amount of time to make sure that you can control this gap and lead your way to the end of this race. But we really are getting into this GT4 pit stop window for those who haven't yet hit. We now have in that AM class the likes of Bigembe that have just come in. I think we've got Joe Coughlin and David Brown that have come in as well. And now everybody in the GT4s except Wharton and Mennies have been in the box.
Yes, GT4 AM pit stops are complete, and Joe Coughlin is in front of David Brown. As things stand, Bigembe would be out of the championship fight. Brown would be as well, actually. Would there be anybody left here? No, there wouldn't, because only Bigembe can stop Joe Coughlin from winning the title tonight if he wins the race. And with Bigembe down in 5th, this is looking even better and better for Joe Coughlin. Remarkably, the driver with the biggest lead tonight, Frank Sikorsky, is still nowhere near winning the championship because he had the 20-point advantage coming into today, only a 20-point advantage over Pittman, and so that makes it more difficult. But there is Joe Coughlin, currently, maybe, on its way to a championship in 22 minutes.
Yeah, we were talking about even 45 minutes ago that there were, at that point, 5 or 6 drivers within a 45-point margin. There's now only three others within 60. I mean, it's incredible to see how the race has swung around in the favour of Joe Coffin to where he now has live of that 50-point lead, which is more than what can be picked up next week. So incredible to see that turnaround for him. But as it stands, all four championship leaders are at least in the net race leads. Wharton and Menzies, of course, have to come into the pit lane, but Kieran Sharp is the net race leader there. All four of the leaders, therefore, are the leaders in the championship and have been extending their gap accordingly. So it's getting increasingly difficult for anybody else to win the championship, and for those that are going to stay alive, there's only going to be a handful of drivers, if not just a couple, that are still available in those battles when we come to Brands Hatch next week.
Well, this is surprising in some ways, the way that this race has turned out. So, GT4 AM and GT3 Pro Championships may well be settled today. A big amount of the story in GT4 Pro will be settled as well, with Kieran Sharp and Daniel Thomas, although it doesn't look like it is going to be fully settled. Worth noting that there is only really regularly 5 or 6 drivers in the field in each race for GT4 Pro, so you really want to be within 20 points. Thomas would still be, but he'd really be needing Sharp to have some problems. I think if either of them actually go into the next week's race with a championship advantage, they might be able to hold on to it. So it really puts the importance on this race for Daniel Thomas.
And really, in terms of the maths for Thomas right now, if it was to stay as it is in terms of the net race and Kieran Sharp won the race, Daniel Thomas came second, then that 12-point advantage would mean that he wouldn't just need... Daniel Thomas would have to win the race and then wouldn't just need Kieran Sharp to finish third, but finish fourth, because if you finish third, it's only an 11-point deficit. So therefore, Sharp could still hang on to win the championship by a single point. And when you've only had 5 drivers in this race, and with Brandon Lowton retiring a long time ago, it means that realistically, you have to finish last of the 4, and the chances of that happening with the dominance that we've seen from both of them so far this season is very, very slim. So I think Daniel Thomas knows how important this move is. If he can have any kind of go, he's surely going to make a lunge of some sort.
Here comes Cooper towards Brooklands, and now he goes for the dive inside of Cheverton. He's not quite far enough alongside, and the general headwinds of using that Porsche against a Mustang is proving to be a problem, as you would expect it to be for Ben Cooper, who needs to gain 3 places in the final 20 minutes to keep this championship alive against Adam Watson. Not sure at what stage in the race indeed he's going to be pointing to for where things really all went wrong for him. I think early on, getting involved in battles with the likes of Aidan Carter was difficult, yes, but after all, that wasn't even in a position in the top 5. Maybe today he would accept the fact that he's just not quite had the speed that was required.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a couple of drivers it really has been difficult with leaders turning the screw in terms of that championship picture to really be able to keep yourself involved. At least Frank Sikorsky in the GT3 amps. I don't think anybody behind him can be, much disappointed that they didn't win the race. Same could be realistically said for Adam Watson in the GT3 Pros as well. But yeah, I think a lot of what ifs will be in the back of drivers' minds this evening. Those little moments, those big moments that we saw, even down at Aintree in the Loop, with a lot of the GT4 cars that really shuffled up the pack. It's going to come back to haunt a couple of drivers and live nicely in the memory of others, but they are the moments that can be millimeters in difference, as we saw, to create the contact in the first place, can have such great ramifications for everybody else. Cooper trying to spring a surprise to the inside, nearly got his nose chopped off there, and
Cheverton again hangs on. Cooper running out of ideas here and running out of time to get this move done for 5th place. As the final stops in GT4 Pro for the day are happening right now as well, with Wharton and Menzies. That is going to be a lead for Sharp, as Cooper again to the inside. Bit tentative that time. Cheverton now feeling confident and comfortable. He can slam the door as well, although he's left it open there. There was very nearly contact, and the aggression is just being turned up now.
This is really going to start to become a crucial lap or two in this little battle, as we do see Menzies and Wharton come down pit road, and therefore Sharp and Thomas re-inherit the lead in 2nd place. Is there any kind of move in the offing for Ben Cooper, who has been sat there for such a long time now. He's going to be sick of seeing the back of Matt Cheverton's car, but Cheverton has been able to defend the position well enough that he's just frustrated Cooper and not allowed him to make any kind of move. But Cooper, I think confidence and belief are probably ebbing away from him, but he needs to keep that up if he's going to try and get himself back inside the top 5 in this race. But I think he will know that even that wouldn't be enough, and so may start to consign himself to the position that he's in. But he is going to have to be careful, because you can see in the background there is Aiden Carter, who of course had that damage earlier on in the race, already getting towards the back of these two.
And towards the final chicane they come, and Cooper has got to be wondering where and how he can actually do this now. It's turning into a bit of a struggle, really, as he now makes his way onto the front straight. 16 minutes to go. Unclear as to quite how many laps that's going to mean, but probably 9, given the point of our race leader, Adam Watson. Towards the first sector again, and this is traffic now. Cooper can maybe take advantage here, but he can't. Now maybe. Oh no, not quite. He tried to do what I was talking about, get alongside Cheverton. He could box him in and make it difficult, but he couldn't do it. He's not actually backed up very much though. He's still got a chance, and he knows now, Cheverton, what he's going to do. That's the problem. Cooper's been behind for so long that Cheverton knows what he's trying to do here.
The advantage that Cooper can have on Cheverton now, as he looks up the inside as they make their way through Lovefield. Difficult to make an inside line through there, especially with the GT4 on the outside. But the advantage that Cooper now has in comparison to Cheverton is he knows that Cheverton knows what he's going to do, so he can almost double bluff, fade to the inside, break a little bit earlier, take a better racing line, and maybe get a better exit in one of these corners, in one of these important exits, such as the loop and in through Aintree, to get down the Wellington Straight and have a chance at Brooklands once again. So it's almost that, reverse psychology, that double bluffing, the triple bluffing that could be going on here. You always have to be guessing if you're the driver in front, and I'm sure Cheverton doesn't feel safe whatever Cooper is doing behind him.
Yeah, well, yes, even if it is predictable, it's certainly worrying. Here's Kieran Sharp versus Daniel Thomas. What an important battle this is going to be. Kieran Sharp, to win this race, would be absolutely massive for the championship. It would mean a top 3 only would be I say only. It's still obviously difficult, but a top 3 would do it in next week's race at Brands Hatch. If he doesn't win this race and it goes to Thomas instead, there would be dead even going into the next week's race, and it would be effectively a 1-race shootout between the two of them. This is how important it is, and Thomas will absolutely realise that as much as Sharp.
Yeah, well, I don't know about you, Ewan, but as a neutral, I think with respect to Kieran Sharp, it'd be nice to see that time. I wouldn't know. But Daniel Thomas looking for that move on the back of Kieran Sharp, looking for it again. David Brown, though, and Joe Coffin swapping positions. Is this Coffin's chance to be ebbing away to win the title tonight? Not sure what's happened to the 136, but there's a spot for the lead in the GT4 rounds, and we're going to see the same in the pros. We'll have to wait and see. But there is Coffin behind the 27.
And that puts the championship back alive again. It would mean that Coffin would only have to start the race, but even so, it means he cannot be sure just yet that he has got this title won. For some reason, David Brown is in front. We're going to have to keep our eyes in about at least 3 different directions here, because that battle in AM is pretty close. In Pro for GT4, it's even closer. And there's some minor positions going on across the GT3 categories as well here. We'll try and see what happens as Coffin gave up the lead to Brown. We'll try and follow the battle for the lead in GT4 Pro as best we can as well, because Daniel Thomas is very close in behind, as well as this battle, which is getting more for a minor place as every minute goes past, to be honest, because Cooper is so far away from keeping this title alive, with Watson out winning the race. I think that's Bugembe in the background, by the way, who wouldn't necessarily be any more in the championship fight because of Coffin going back to second. But anyway, where are the leaders in GT4 Pro? I think they've just come over the line not that long ago. They're in the first sector as of right now, just going towards the end of the first sector, and Kieran Sharp is trying his best to hold on for these final 12 minutes. Such an important battle. As you mentioned, it will be a tight championship heading into that final round. And, well, we'd like to see it. Kieran Sharp absolutely would not like to see it, that is for sure.
Yeah, I think Kieran Sharp and the maybe the only driver in his team who wouldn't necessarily like to see the intrigue of a tied final round of the season, Daniel Thomas. I think he knows the importance of trying to make a move here, because that 12-point gap is so much bigger, particularly in such a small field. Well, they're nothing, obviously, but to make Kieran Sharp finish 4th would be incredibly difficult, and of course would be completely out of his hands. He would have control of his own destiny if he could find the move through in these final 11.5 minutes. Ben Cooper on the top of the screen looking for the move, still can't quite find his way through. Carl Chase now in the way as both of his GT3s work their way through. Brooklands and Lovefield inside line out for Cooper. Can he get the release off of the corner? Can he box in Cheverton?
Oh, no!
Around and in the wall.
Cheverton was boxed, but he tried to come over on Ben Cooper anyway. They're across the road and all over the place through Woodcote. And Cheverton may well have a case to answer for. Oh no, he's been slammed! He's been absolutely slammed by one of the drivers coming through there. Oh my goodness me! It's a huge crash through Woodcote. As he was on the racing line, he was trying to get back going again. And for some reason, someone didn't see him. I'm not sure who it was. Someone didn't see him. Let's have a little look. It looked like a dark Cayman. This is the battle in the incident, sorry. It looks to me like Cooper's got him boxed there and Cheverton comes across, to be honest. But afterwards was bizarre. Was it Bugembe maybe who came in? Well, here is Bugembe. Is there Cheverton waiting? Yes. Oh dear, he is moving and he didn't really know where he was going. And that surely is the end of Joshua Bugembe's championship charge.
Yeah, I mean, let's see it on board here. How difficult is it to see? Oh, well, there's smoke.
Oh, very.
He can't see the car at all. And then there's a car there. That's not really what you want to be having. Like, you know, some would say that it's not necessarily wise to drive directly through that smoke. But Bugembe, say nothing for him. Meanwhile, Coffin and Brown are swapping positions again. They are exchanging it like there's no tomorrow. The 136 is ahead of the 27 now. And on the inside lines, they make the one to the Wellington straight. This is a dramatic battle at the end of the race.
Coffin's back in front again in these final 10 minutes. And Kieran Sharp is, by the way, was flashing his lights at one of the GT3s. The tension in these GT4 lead battles is palpable because the participants are flashing their lights at GT3s and their choices on when to pass them. This is how the lead change happened in GT4 AM. It's a good run from Coffin here. Defence from Brown. Coffin just breaks later. Right round the outside, squeezes Brown at the right moment. On the inside for the next part, and he's through. That was a good overtake in the end from Joe Coffin that might well win him a championship tonight.
Yeah, and let's see if Dave Brown can come back at him. Those two really have been fighting hammer and tong for some time now, as Kieran Sharp and Daniel Thomas may start fighting in the next minute or so, because as we get around the final corner, once again, 9 minutes just shy of that left on the clock. Daniel Thomas, as we've said, knows that he really needs to get this win here. Otherwise, the maths is going to become very difficult for him next week. But we haven't really seen any move thrown by him. Is he waiting, biding his time to almost keep his cards close to his chest? That could be the case, but there's a risk the later you run into the race without making any kind of move. Is he going to come here at Village? The answer is not for the time being, at least.
He's got to do it at some stage. Otherwise, he will lose out in a big time. He's got to give it a go somewhere. At the moment, it's not clear where that is going to be. 8 minutes to go. Adam Watson is just on the start of a new lap. He's actually just come through on these guys. That is Adam Watson, sorry. I should have identified that. He's just come through on these guys. He's just started, what I think is 5 laps to go. So these two will have the same as well. And that's not what Kieran Sharp wants to hear either. Watson's going to cross the line with quite a little amount of time remaining. And he's going to force an extra lap to this race, giving Daniel Thomas maybe an extra chance to make the overtake.
Yeah, it's going to come down to the wire, isn't it? I don't think we're really going to know which way it's going to go until we get towards, well, at least Stowe, maybe even the Val chicane on that final lap here. But these two have been this close for such vast proportions of this season that they really will get a good sense of where each other's at. Joe Coffin's lost the lead again, and he's gone around. Oh, and they're both off the road. David Brown, I think he's back in the lead, but he's off the road, I'm not too sure.
That was Cooper. That was Ben Cooper off the road. Brown is unaffected by the looks of that, although I don't know how that can be possible considering they were running so close. So we'll have another replay and we'll see what happens. But Ben Cooper's particularly miserable race is continuing here, and Joe Coffin's trial to try and win a championship tonight is going pretty badly now. This is what happened. Oh, it looks like Cooper's going to lose it in front of these guys, is he? Yeah, goes wide, slides, and oh, he parks it in front of Coffin, who's pretty unlucky there.
Oh yeah, there's nothing that he could have done, David Brown. Just the thankful beneficiary, just on the exit of the corner as they run their way through. Oh my goodness me, as they run their way side by side again through. That's Cops this time. It's going to get even tenser.
Adam Watson.
Brooklyn's. Oh yes.
Adam Watson's off, and he's not off. I'm not sure where he is at the moment, but he's dropping down the field very quickly at the moment. It looks like it's a technical problem from what I'm seeing on the timing screen.
No.
We will see whether that is true or not, but he is, at the moment, out of the running for this race at the worst possible moment. All the more annoying for Ben Cooper, I would imagine. This is what happened to Watson, who has disconnected from this race. As a result, he will drop at least to 8th place by the looks of it here, unless he can get back again.
It'll be absolutely devastating for him. It looks like that would cost him the chance of winning the title tonight, regardless of whether he can get back in whatever he finishes in, because he only had that 8-point advantage in the live points before he disconnected over Ben Cooper. Would only have to drop to 3rd to lose that possible championship winning advantage. So soul destroying for him, at least for the time being. Great for Alfie Nichols, though, who now gets to the front of the field, but getting a disconnection so late in the race after being so dominant is going to be absolutely soul destroying, really is.
Wow. What a moment for Alfie Nichols, though. Could he possibly take a race win here? Could he possibly? I think that's him who's just come through on Sharp and Thomas here in the Ferrari. By the way, that means that it's pretty much confirmed now that Watson will not win the title from tonight. Joe Coffin at the moment won't win it either. It looks like we're going to go into next week with all 4 titles still on the line somehow, and at one stage tonight that was not looking like it was remotely possible.
Well, at one stage, in fact, not too long ago at all, we looked like we were going to have 2 decided, one being led by 31 points, and the other by 12, which looked almost difficult to surmount anyway. All of a sudden, if Daniel Thomas can get through Kieran Sharp as well, we could have a tied championship, and the other 3 still alive. So this really has been a race of ebbing and flowing. It's why we love these 90-minute events, because it gives us that little bit longer, and the drivers that wider time frame to almost get their race sorted out. If there's issues towards the start, they can fight their way back through. And I mean, well represented in that by Aiden Carter, who had that big damage early on in the race, that front right or front left even pretty much dragging across the ground, and is now only 5 seconds off the podium place. It's incredible turnaround, and only possible at this length of event.
3 laps to go, by the way, in this race, and it looks like Kieran Sharp is just starting to get an advantage that he might well just keep now. 0.8 of a second. What can Daniel Thomas do here to get on terms and get past Kieran Sharp? It wouldn't be unexpected that there's another twist in the tail in this race here today. There's been a lot of them so far. There still is, by the way, Andrew Pike, Aiden Carter and Franek Sikorsky probably to pass them in GT3. Are they going to open the door? As Joe Coffin, meanwhile, is trying to fight off Luca Monroe still for 2nd place. This is turning into a really difficult day for the championship leader.
Yeah, it's really, again, use that word ebbing and flowing again for Coffin. He was right towards the back of the field, then he was leading the race. All of a sudden now he's having to defend the P2 that he thought looked safe for a long time, but now with the contact that was right down here at turn 4, it's maybe at a bit of risk. Inside line for Luca Monroe, that's aggressive to try and get himself up into P2 earlier than he otherwise could have done. He'll have the inside line as they get their way onto the Wellington Straight, and he's going to have to be careful. But again, inside once again at Brooklands, it'll turn to the outside line at Luffield, but if he can break late enough, he can cover off that line. But he's a little bit behind into the corner. Let's see if Coffin can hang it around the outside.
Give him the inside for Luffield if he can stay there. But Monroe cuts it off. And Luca Monroe is into 2nd place. That's great news for him. He will stay alive in the championship as well with that pass. Although it would be unlikely. It's even better news for David Brown, I suppose, who's now going to be moving further up, and even more frustrating to Joshua Begembe, who's had so many problems today. This is Franz Sikorsky, who we've not seen very much of at all today, but he's just passed Aiden Carter. Another great display from the AM driver, who's going to win by a very long way here. He's not going to clinch the title, but it's another big step forward and a huge statement victory.
Yeah, absolutely monumental. 48 seconds plus is what we're looking at for Franek Sikorsky. After the up and downs that he's had so far this season, looked strong in the opening race at Donington Park, but a couple of little moments really cost him a chance at the win. Snedden showed some really strong pace, led the race for quite some time, and even last week did some really good work. But he might be doing having another win tonight. Ben Cooper with some more issues, though. It's going to bring James King to the top 5.
He's underfield, Ben Cooper, or has he got a drive-through penalty? The two options, if you want to vote at home. Meanwhile, side by side between Wharton and Mennies here, and Ned Wharton gets through into the podium places for the second week in a row. It's been a good season for him, even though he's joined late. He's had a good time of things, although it's all unravelled. Shouldn't have said anything. What a silly thing to say. Ned Wharton's off to the outside of the circuit, and, well, he will get that place back from Mennies, to be fair to him. But that's what happens when I speak too soon. Wharton goes back up to third.
Yeah, good sportsmanship really there from Christian Mennies. He almost recognised, or at least admitted, a little bit of fault in that. Led him back through as they made their way down the Wellington Straight, and they've not lost any positions through it. So it's just almost like a micro race within it. And Christian Mennies just wanting to continue it onwards, sticking his nose down the inside. You know, he must be thinking now he should have backed out. But really nice to see him wait for Ned Wharton. I think the flash of the lights was a bit of respect there from Ned.
Yeah, I think so. Meanwhile, only seconds to go, but Alfie Nichols is going to push on for one more. Oh, don't tell me he's going to disconnect as well. Heavens above. White flag waves, and, well, what a victory it would be for him if he can stay connected to this server and take the win from here.
Well, this Wharton-Mennies battle is likely to continue if Nichols can stay in the race. If Barber can somehow come back to win the race, that would be quite some story. But he is still going to be in championship contention as it stands, going into the final race. I do believe only just, or he may not be actually. It's going to be close either way. But so many great battles throughout this race. I think we've set ourselves up beautifully for the championship finale, because all 4 championships are somehow now perfectly poised. No champion seemingly going to come out of tonight, and those championship leaders who were all leading for a time have now a lot more work to do and a much more difficult circuit to race at next week.
It is very different next week to what we've got here tonight, and indeed last week when we were at Spa, as these two make their way over the line for the final time in racing conditions anyway as well. So Alfie Nichols into the final sector right now. What a story for him. He didn't compete in the first 3 rounds, only joined us for round 4 here. He does have a lot of experience in GT3 racing. He's very accustomed to this Ferrari as well, but I'm not sure he will have been expecting a big win in a field like this either. Already flashing his lights, whether that's a celebration or indeed a notification to the traffic up in front, because there is a bit of it. But Alfie Nichols is going to come into the final few corners right now. It is a spectacular win for the debutant in the Motorsport UK Esports GT Challenge. Alfie Nichols takes overall victory here at Silverstone. Flashes the lights in celebration as well. A surprise but delightful win for the British driver. Alfie Nichols weaves over the line and takes a special victory here tonight. Not that far behind him, the AM winner is going to come across the line. Franek Sikorsky dominant again in this class. Over 50 seconds in advantage at the line. And it is another step forward in the championship. Another 5 points, or 6 points gained rather. He'll be 26 ahead going into the next round. Kieran Schott, meanwhile, in the background, comes over the line in GT4 Pro to take the victory there. And that's a big step forward for him as well. He's 12 points ahead going into the final round, knowing now that a podium is all he needs. Ned Wharton, meanwhile, it looks like he's going to hang on for a podium here into the final chicane as well.
May do, but Christy Mendes has got a good release off of the corner. Is he going to go for the inside line? You can see Wharton defending for all he's worth, trying to tighten off that corner. And Mendes looks for the outside line, won't quite be able to find it, and takes a huge bounce over that inside sausage curb. And we'll just have to settle for P4 in the end. But great little tussle between them as there is for the lead.
Oh! Look at Monroe through and slowing down. David Brown slowing down here. Coffin might well take the win away from Monroe here. He's under big pressure into the final chicane. He's had to cut the course. Oh, Monroe slowing down as well. Here comes Coffin round the outside through the final corner. Is Joe Coffin going to take this? He's off the circuit. He's got his nose in front. Carl Chase pulls alongside, but Joe Coffin wins the race, and with it, he wins the championship as well. Remarkable from Joe Coffin as it all kicked off at the very end there in GT4M. What on earth went on? Brown looks like he's run out of fuel. Monroe almost looked like he was spluttering to the line as well. Let's have another look. What was going on here?
In towards Stowe, big contact then on the inside as Monroe then goes off the road after making the contact with Brown, comes back onto the circuit, and then wait for it, there's Joe Coffin looking for an outside line. The defensive line means that it's a difficult exit for Monroe to have to deal with, but then Coffin just drives clean around the outside. It's a bit of a slide, isn't it, from Monroe? That's what's cost him. Coffin just drives clean around the outside. I mean, clean off the track as well, to be fair, but he's got across the line in first, and the fact that Carl Chase has finished 2/10 off of the win just shows how crazy it got at the end of the race.
Yeah, maybe it was just a slide from Monroe. But Coffin did go off the road. And that is going to be argued about afterwards between the two of them. Well, very interesting indeed. But if it is indeed going to stand, it will be a championship for him. In GT3 Pro, it's an astonishing victory for Alfie Nichols by 2 seconds ahead of Mike Barber, with Andrew Pike joining them on the podium, who gained points in the championship along with Aidan Carter. James King rounds out the top 5, with Ben Cooper having a pretty disastrous day, still gaining points anyway. Pedro Silva and Adam Watson were next. Watson disconnecting pretty late on. Cheverton did actually get out across the line, although 5 laps down. Rachel Conkley retired fairly early on after that pile-up at the loop. In GT3 AM, Franich Sikorsky wins by a very long way ahead of Ricky Pittman, with Dave Young in 3rd place. Andy Chell was the first driver 1 lap down alongside John Earl, Ben Pennyworth and Zed Murray. Nathan Anstis was 2 laps down despite battling away with some of those around throughout that race. Jim Fox and Jake Pitt retired before the race even reached 1/3 distance. In GT4 Pro, it's a big victory for Kieran Sharp, who now leads the championship by 12 points over Daniel Thomas. Nev Wharton held off Christian Mendes at the end, and Brandon Loudon retired about halfway through the race. And in GT4 AM, it's a great victory for Joe Coffin, who was 6 minutes ahead of Luca Monroe and just 3/10 ahead of Carl Chase. David Brown ran out of fuel towards the line, but still finished 4th at a Baby Grim, with Ethan Marone just outside that top 5 despite a good race earlier on. Matty Wild Nash here with the last drivers on the lead lap. Joshua Bagembe is out of the championship fight with a 9th place finish, 2nd bad result in a race row for him. Unfortunately, 10th place went to Ashley Toff ahead of Dylan Mystery, who retired very early on in that race. Well, let's have a chat first of all to the, I was hoping overall winner. Alfie Nichols does normally come for a chat on broadcast and whatever, but he's not there at the moment. So we'll have to deal with the GT3 AM winner. First of all, Franich Sikorsky, who has won once again in GT3 AM. Congratulations, Franich, on the victory. It's a huge margin, I've got to say. Were you expecting to be so strong here at Silverstone tonight?
To be honest, the race hasn't gone the way I wanted. My dad, before the race, told me to stop being so self-critical. But to be honest, I'm probably gonna be the most self-critical I've been for a while now, because nothing went the way I wanted. The car on the turn-in was understeering, which I don't like. At the apex, it was oversteering, which I don't like. It was very slow on the straights, which didn't help me. And to be honest, even though it might look like I've got nearly, I think, a minute of advantage to another car in my category, it was really frustrating and boring race.
Well, it's still a win. Remarkable you say that, considering the advantage that you had, as you say. It also gives you a bigger advantage in the championship now, going into Brands Hatch. How do you feel your chances are of holding on to that championship win in 1 week's time?
Well, I'm another step closer into getting the title. And I don't think there will be any changes in my mind. I want to push as much as I can, being close to some guys from pro category and running my true pace and not giving up any advantage whatsoever.
Well, congratulations on a win tonight, Franek, even if you aren't particularly pleased with the car or whatever. We will hopefully see you in 7 days' time, but until then, congratulations on the win tonight.
Thank you very much, and see you next week.
Thanks very much. Franek Sikorski there, the winner in GT3. Well, we've been chatting away. Now Alfie Nichols got himself into the waiting room, so we can chat to him now as well, the overall winner from tonight. Congratulations, Alfie, on the win. How unexpected is this for you, or expected indeed, to win in your first race in the series?
Man, I really lucked into that. You know, Adam, man, he's so fast, just pulled away, and then I saw the little packet loss that disconnects. It's like, oh my days, I want to win just on the opening round. So really chuffed a bit with that, man. Really wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, what were you expecting from this? It's a new series for you. I'm not sure if you've done any Motorsport UK sports racing in the past. If you have, I haven't seen it. But what were you expecting in a new field of drivers?
I mean, I was trying to gauge the pace over the weekend, like what people would be doing, and you know, P3. I would have been happy with P3. You know, I feel like we pulled away at the start, kept with the leaders, and then you know, the pit stop came, managed to get into P2 from that. And so, you know, either P2 or P3 would have been brilliant for me this round.
Well, congratulations on going even better than that and taking the win here tonight. As I say, congratulations, Alfie, and hopefully we'll see you again next week.
Hopefully, we'll see.
Right, thanks very much. Alfie Nichols there in the race-winning car tonight here in the GT3 Pro class, and indeed overall. In GT4 Pro, it was Kieran Sharp who was able to take the win here tonight, just ahead of Daniel Thomas. Congratulations on the win. It was a good fight between yourself and Daniel towards the end, but how much did you take from last week and getting beat by Daniel Thomas despite trailing him through the first stint? I would have thought saving fuel and then getting ahead of him later. He managed to hang on in that situation. This time round, you hung on after leading most of the first part of the race as well. What did you take from last week's race into this one?
I think I just had to match him more, saving at the start, despite putting a bit of a gap last week. I think there's enough slipstream going around where, you know, you couldn't really break away too much. But tonight, yeah, I was kind of excessively just backing off, kind of backing him up a bit, but then the moment we were all bunching up, so I just floor it to build a bit of a gap, and I only had to take, I think, a very tiny bit more fuel than him in the stop this week.
This now means that you only need I say only, saying only, broadcast like that's easy. You only need a podium in the GT4 Pro class next week to take the title now because of this race victory here. How confident are you of doing that and clinching the title in 7 days?
Well, judging by my pace all season, and no doubt I'll just be near the front, but you never know with traffic what it'll bring in the races. I think a lot of people had some bad luck with incidents and things, and I just need to not get caught up in something like that. But yeah, it should be close. So.
Certainly at Brands Hatch, that is absolutely going to be true. Congratulations, Kieran, on the win tonight, and we'll see you again in 7 days.
Thanks, see you later.
Thanks very much, Kieran Sharp, the winner in GT4 Pro today. In GT4 Am, Joe Coffin took the victory, and what an end to the race it was. Congratulations, Joe. By our calculations, we think you've won the championship as well, mathematically, with a round still to go. But let's set that aside for a second. What about that final lap there in the run to the end in GT4 Am? A remarkable battle. What did you make of it on the last lap?
The entire race was absolutely crazy, including the last lap. You say that Luca absolutely came flying up behind me. I had a bit of damage from an incident with GT3, so he had the pace on me, and then it kind of came back to myself in the end. And then David came out of nowhere, running out of fuel, I think, and then they came together off the track and then back on. And then I was just saying to Luca in the waiting room that I was, I think, probably in Chichester coming through the last corner. I was very wide, so the positions might be swapped round. I said to him that maybe that was the right move, because I was miles away. But what a race! What a race!
Absolutely. What did you feel coming into this, though, in terms of your situation? You've got a relatively big lead in the championship. You've had a good few weeks as well, a good season. And what were your expectations for Silverstone?
I was just planning to hitch a ride with everyone else, and that's kind of how the first stint kind of played out. I was quite happy sat in fifth. I've obviously got a great lead in the championship coming into this round, so just sticking with the guys ahead, and then the GT3s came through and caused absolute mayhem. And me and David kind of came out of all of that with a decent lead together. David had an incredible pit stop. I got to say thanks to him, because he gave me the position out of the pits. We were side by side in the pit lane. And I think he probably deserved the position more than me. But yeah, I was just trying to finish the race cleanly in the end, from the start to the end, just trying to be consistent.
Well, congratulations on another win. We will see, of course, what happens post-race, as always. But once again, congratulations on a great drive, and we'll see you at Brands Hatch in a week's time.
Thanks so much, guys. Appreciate all the effort into this. Thanks so much.
Thanks very much. That's Joe Coffin there, who's, by the way, spelled his name wrong in Discord. His own name. Anyway, well, I didn't need to point that out to anyone. Nobody would have known otherwise. But anyway, I've decided to expose him either way. We are running out of time, but I will interview just one more driver from the top three overall before we go tonight, because that's heard very much from Andrew Pike this season. Congratulations, Andrew, on a top three finish here tonight. Just 20 seconds off the win of Alfie Nichols. How did you find your evening at Silverstone?
It was fairly busy, fairly chaotic, that one, wasn't it? Slightly hollow podium with Adam disconnecting there, but you got to put yourself in a position to take advantage of those things, I guess, haven't you? So, pretty good result, I would say.
Exactly, and it's a fourth top five this season. How much do you think that sort of consistency is now putting yourself right up towards the front now? I think you're going to be third after this race in the championship, maybe higher. It's certainly putting you in the mix this season. How much of that is down to your consistency?
In this type of car, that's all I've got, to be honest. It's I qualified well tonight, which is unusual for me. I'm generally more endurance sort of based with this type of car, so to be able to stay out of trouble and keep myself roughly where I need to be is something that I can do. It's whether I can get the lap in qualifying. So next week, I'll have to sweat this one a little bit, I think, and try and find some pace.
Well, congratulations on finding the pace to get a podium here tonight, and we look forward to seeing you at Brands Hatch.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Thanks so much. That's Andrew Pike in third place here tonight overall in tonight's race. Next week, we'll be at Brands Hatch, 7:30 UK time. We'll be there from April the 1st. It's going to be a fun one. Looks like we're going to have lots of championships to talk about, and based on the racing tonight, 4 good races as well.
Yeah, hopefully we aren't fooled by what we see on the track in a week's time. It's going to be a really, really exciting race. We've set this up so well. It didn't look like it was going to go that way about an hour ago, but with what happened towards the end of the races and all of the championships, we really are set up beautifully well, and I can't wait, really.
It's going to be fantastic. Thanks for watching tonight, all that have done here on RaceSpotTV. It's been a pleasure to bring you this Motorsport UK Esports GT Challenge round from Silverstone. We'll be back in 1 week's time from Brands Hatch to bring you all the action from our championship finale live from 7:30 UK time, as always. I've been Ian Lee alongside Darren Thacker, and Hugo Louise has been behind the cameras. Until we see you at Brands Hatch in 1 week's time, it's goodbye for now.